at Tom Fontana's office. So that was great. I met a lot of writers and producers, and will hopefully be useful connections for the future. And I have a meeting with Tom in 2 weeks to discuss a recommendation and other things. So that's where I am right now.
And by the way, Ro, not that the bar is high, but Tom was a guest last week in the class following this.
It's not fair.
Okay, so
Not fair.
Bree, you're up. Yeah.
I'm Bree. I'm from Colorado. I had an internship last semester with MTV in the research department. Now I'm a temp with the president of MTV.
Hey, I'm Jamie. I'm from New Jersey, and I'm currently an intern assistant to a director, writer, producer, video.
Okay, cool.
Hi, I'm Stephanie. Last semester I interned in the NBC casting department. I wasn't as creative as I was, but still cool to be there.
Very neat.
Hey, Steph, I don't think I asked you, where are you from originally?
Oh, Maryland.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I read outside of DC.
I'm Samantha. I'm from Virginia, and I've had 2 internships while I've been here, and they've mostly been in the fall, and they're both at Viacom. The first was at TV Land for promotions, and the second was at MTV for production and development. And I've actually applied to True TV twice as an intern, and I made it as far as the interview and never got the position.
Oh, man, what's going on over there? Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, Rohit.
Hi, I'm Jim. I'm from New York. I just finished an internship working on an independent film for in the art department. And so now I'm between that starting PAing later this week on another project.
Cool. What's the independent feature?
Doesn't have a title. It's directed by the Saki brothers, just New York based independent filmmakers.
Cool.
Hi, I'm Valerie. I'm from Montreal in Canada. And this semester I'm doing an internship with Apostle. So they're an internship production company.
Cool.
And then last semester I interned with a small film production company called Sea Lion Films.
Okay.
Rebecca. I'm from Maryland. I'm not currently working now, but since September of 2014, I worked for about 1.5 years as a PA on almost every production in this godforsaken town. But yeah, I worked on Madam Secretary, I worked on The Get Done, I worked on Saturday Night Live, I worked on pretty much everything. So I'm tired.
I'm tired.
Wait, I don't know, did I ask you when you were at SNL, were you assigned to a department?
No,
You were just
I
general?
did the walkies when I was there. It was
Yeah.
like a random day where they couldn't find
Got it.
anybody to come. So it's just, I came up, I was like, they're like, do you know how to sign out walkie-talkies? Like,
Yeah.
So that was that. So.
Great.
I'm Andrew. I'm from Texas, Dallas, Texas, and I've worked as a PA, and I currently work as an intern at a film trailer editing company.
Oh, are you an editor as well?
Yeah.
Cool. Man, I think I'll be going to everyone in this room for a job soon, and I'm not even
Well, we're going to get to your background because it does map nicely.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
This is
exactly.
awesome.
Yeah, in hopefully you guys could tell from Rohit's bio, in many ways he maps most directly to your experiences, which we'll get into in a minute. But the thing we were talking about actually was an article that Bree found that was giving people advice to ignore the usual advice about cold calling agents or producers, right? And in this case, especially because everybody here is a writer, is learning how to be a showrunner, is writing individually and is writing collaboratively. So hopefully they are the next generation of showrunners,
Yeah.
right? And if we're lucky, they will employ us one day.
Yes, yes.
Either if you relate it to when you were starting out or now with the perspective you have of the work years under your belt, how do you feel about the prospect of, if you have no connections, do you just blindly send a letter, an email, do you send somebody a link, a reel, a script, et cetera, et cetera?
I think it's a completely different time now, and what did the article say? Did the article say don't do that, or they're saying ignore that?
It was saying don't do it. I was offering the opinion, I think it was written probably for people more like them who know this already, but more to the world at large. If you just have this vague sense of, oh, I'd like to write for TV, she was saying your odds are so nil, kind of don't bother, right?
Yeah, and there was also a point like where one person had emailed her saying that he had taken like 3 courses and writing query letters, and he's like sending them for 10 years.
Right.
And it's like, are you serious? Like,
Yeah.
what have you been doing? Like, you know, you could have established a whole other career.
Right.
Like I think you guys are going about it obviously because this is your most focused and this is what you want to do, so you're going about it the best possible way. I actually would encourage, so I don't know where I fall in this, but I've spoken to interns, I've spoken to people who come in for jobs, and I said, you know, sometimes they're saying I'm a writer, but I don't want to write for you guys. And I was like, all right, so who do you want to write for? And they'll tell me, like, they'll mention, I said, what's your favorite TV shows? What are the movies you like? Bless you. Are there producers, directors you admire? Are there writers? So every time anyone mentions that, they say yes. So I always suggest contact someone, send them a letter. There is no harm in doing it. And I've done it. I've sent letters like, I'm a big fan. I work in the business. And I actually got responses, and you'll get a meeting, you'll get something. I think if you're coming at it with some sort of professional sort of, if you're coming at it in the right way, if you're just doing it completely random and saying, hey, I don't work in this business yet.
How do you go about that? Because a friend of mine actually recommended me to do that with like Bad Robot, J.J. Abrams' company.
Totally.
But that's only because I come from the same alma mater as he did. And it's like, she was like, just call them and say, hey, I'm an alum from Sarah Lawrence and I really like what you do and I would love to work in the mailroom or a trainee or something. But to me, I'm always frozen up and nervous about doing that because I feel like I'm being rude somewhat. Or is that just the feminine side of me and I'm feeling really uncomfortable?
I think, look, again, how you come.
Stereotype yourself.
Right. And I think just coming at it in a genuine way. Like if you're, I mean, first maybe go through your school if there's a way to do that, but then there's no harm in targeting the production company and saying like, try to get the meeting, try to get like 5 minutes on the calendar somewhere. I mean, It's impossible sometimes with certain directors like J.J. Abrams, but you never know. Maybe you'll get someone who works in development there or someone who can sort of guide you. I know when I'm on that side of the fence, if I got that letter or email or call, I would absolutely map out some time.
Yeah.
Just to meet you. So
and that's often true with school connections or other institutional connections. And part of it is if you know already that J.J. Abrams is that way about school, then I agree. It's even if it's not your nature, it seems to me crazy not to utilize it. And I'm not underestimating. And by the way, I know for women in particular, that is, it can be a built-in hesitation that you have to kind of power through. Not for you, maybe. but no, I don't underestimate it. Or just if for whatever reason it's not your personality to put yourself out that way. I get it if it's for a true cold call where maybe it's not worth the amount of time it would be to send out 100 or 1,000 letters.
Right,
but if there's reason to believe this one has better odds than others of succeeding, then maybe you do go, okay, it's not normally my way, but I should really do it here.
Also, it's a different world now from when when I started, at least. There's a whole world. You guys know this. You guys live this. It's the social networking world. Like within your LinkedIn's, within your sort of, even through family, friends, there's going to be someone who, like, whatever number of degrees it is, that can get you to Bad Robot. That can say, like, you know what, my cousin knows this person, something, whatever. So it is worth targeting. I would.
Yeah.
I would tell you, go after whatever you want as soon as you can, and like, that's just if you know what you want to do, be focused on.
But by the way, not to get too stuck on the social media part, but I agree with you. If you think of all of these as tools, right? Andrew, it goes to something you and I were talking about before class started about the way that Twitter, you perceive, I happen to agree, as a little bit more of a business thing in terms of like following publications or people, public people. Twitter to me is an interesting one where, let's say, Sam, that you wanted to get J.J. Abrams to him, but didn't have an immediate way. I don't know if he's a big Twitter guy or not, but I see enough people who are. The public part of Twitter, whereby you can follow somebody and then take a shot at asking for a follow back, right?
Right.
Again, that's a method that didn't exist before. Some people who know Twitter use it very well, right? And you do hear stories all the time of like Judd Apatow, apparently, sometimes will follow people back and then you engage in a conversation. The best story I've heard is, have we talked about this British show that Amazon picked up here? I think it's called Catastrophe.
I think so.
Okay, it's a romantic comedy, written and performed by a British woman and an American guy, robbed someone out of Boston.
Delaney.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
The story that I've read is they were both sort of nicely doing their careers. They started following each other on Twitter just because they liked one another's Twitter feed and connected over Twitter, and then wound up co-creating and selling and starring in a show together, right? Now, arguably, that's all because there was this particular platform that allowed for it. And we're not saying everything's going to work out magically, but you know, within LinkedIn, within Twitter, wherever you're comfortable, use these tools that are available.
When I was reading this blog, I can't find the article now, but there was one where it was just like advice quotes from various established TV writers. And one of them was, you know, if you're into comedy, just write jokes on every day on your Twitter account, and people will find you if you're good. Because I don't know, apparently all these comedy companies just have people just scouring Twitter for funny jokes. And
it's really true. I mean, you don't think of it that way, but it is a platform built. You know, it's like I would say to people in news who maybe want to be opinion writers or eventually contributors to cable or whatever it is, I would say the same thing. Just write really pithy, smart, observational things. All the better if they're funny. I think that's exactly right. I think you'll get, among other things, you'll get maybe comedians or comedy writers following. You will get assistants following. You will get people at agencies and other places whose job now is to find the next gen. Or, by the way, it's more work, but as you know, people, and you've heard some of our guests say it, people are scouring YouTube now the same way. And the other thing is you might, at some place, just be able to say, hey, like, I'm just this guy who's unknown, but I have 5,000 followers. I mean, to someone, that might be meaningful in business, and you never know. And you can say, I can track the growth, and it's once I started writing steadily. You know, these are all business tools at your disposal.
I can follow that up, actually. Just met an old writer's assistant, and he's looking for a job. I worked on the show Silent Library, and it was for MTV. So we had a little reunion party. He was writing jokes, and he started following his favorite comedians.
Right.
One of Jim Norton. He picked up on his feed, and he just kept saying, "This guy's hilarious." Kept using his jokes. Then actually said like, "Hey, I'm using your joke," and this. So he's getting work. Whenever a comedian or talent comes to us, they'll come pitch me. Most of the time, they're just going to give me a Twitter feed. They'll give me their reel, and then they'll also give me their Twitter feed. And that's like, hey, check out my writing. Like if you want to see what I'm doing every day. So it's super useful.
Some people I know do that. It may sound a little old school, but if they write, if Twitter's not their thing, some people will share their blogs for that reason. If they write steadily enough, and that's more their form or their format, or occasionally a Tumblr, whatever it is. I think a lot of it is just about, if you're going to commit to that as a writing platform, obviously do the one that kind of is built for you in a way, or that you can make the most of. So there's so many good areas of Rohit's career in which to dive in. I'm a little uncertain where to start.
Me too.
So why don't we go back to the beginning? When Vinny and I found you as a floating down the river in a basket. Actually, so why don't you say, what were your first jobs coming out of college?
Right out of college, I was a pre-med major, and I got into medical school. I got into a program, somehow snuck my way into one, but then did a tour of New York City with a friend of mine who was looking for jobs. I always wanted to work at Letterman. So I said I wanted to be a camera guy at Letterman. I went up to the marquee. I saw everyone in these like suits sort of helping people out. I'm like, what do you do? He said, we're pages. Make a long story short, I walked down to CBS Broadcast Center. I was like, how do I become a page? Became a page. It wasn't that easy. You have to go through some interviews, but that's where I started. And actually that was, so I actually put my career in that was my college, my bachelor's degree in television was being a CBS page. So there you get to work in the network, you get to roam the hallways, you work in different departments. Like during the day, you're at 60 Minutes or you're at CBS Evening News. Back in the day, it was Geraldo Rivera, the Geraldo Show, or Politically Incorrect. And then you would go in the evenings and work at Letterman. And that's where I was like, this is it. This is where I'd like to be. I want to work at Letterman. That's where I got introduced to Mitch, Vinny.
You guys have met Vinny, right? Did he speak to Vinny Favali from CBS? Did he speak last year to one of your classes?
Yeah.
Okay, so Vinny and Rohit and I are all buds. Going back to and you saw Vinny on a more sustained basis because he was at Letterman every day. I had other stuff going on, so I was there 2-3 days a week.
Right, you were doing programs.
But, exactly.
Yeah. So, actually, the way this worked out was awesome. Is like I became friendly with Mitch and Vinny, and something I'm going to stress upon everyone here, just to grab that mentor. Like, I have you spoke, I'm sure.
No, go ahead.
For me, this was the most important thing, like I would suggest to everyone in this business, is to get a mentor. I know you hear it, you read about it, you hear these stories, but it's the greatest thing you can do in any profession. But what happened was I became friendly. I traveled with Vinny on this 4-city tour for Letterman. And I was ready to go because Letterman, at the time, they were like, what do you want to do next? And I was 22 years old, and I'm like, I want to be a writer. And I just kept saying I want to be a writer. They're like, you can't just become a writer like that. It takes time. You have to go through these steps. But what Vinny, I think, picked up on was like, this kid's a creative. He wants to do stuff. He's proactive. He's really just working hard. So he brought me over to the Howard Stern show on CBS, which I say that was my PhD in television, because that was 12 guys making a Saturday night show that went up against SNL weekly on CBS. You could get away with anything on that show. And I'm just telling you this so you sort of see what happened there is I got my chops in TV there. That's where I learned how to do everything. I mean, it was, okay, these 12 guys are sitting around and you have to fill 60 minutes every week. We were professional about it, but there were so many opportunities to do stuff on that show, and it was yours for the taking. So I wanted to just give a really brief story. It was David Duchovny was on the show, and Howard had asked David Duchovny. He knew he was friends with Gary Shandling, which is appropriate. He said, so what do you and Gary do? Do you just the story just got to this point where it's like, do you guys just sit in the backyard and air horn goes off and then you jump in the pool naked and just hang out and like goof around together? And we watched that segment, we produced it. What I saw right away was, like the executive producer said, you know what, I wish we could see that scene. Like that would be awesome if you could just cap that moment and see that scene. So I was like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna make an animation of David Duchovny and Gary Shandling jumping in a pool naked. And the executive producer absolutely loved it. Like I stayed up for 3 days. I figured out how to make an animation. How would you do it? How would you get it onto TV? And came in, and that kickstarted a whole sort of route of my career of making animation. So I started becoming an animation producer on the show. Just cultivating sort of like good audio and getting good animators to do it better than I could. But I also got to do it on the show as well. So that kickstarted a lot in my career.
Do you mind, can I now add in from my perspective?
Absolutely.
And I'll speak for Vinny as well. This is, I don't think any of this will surprise you, but so what we saw is everything you're hearing here, including, Rohit was just always positive, always eager, always volunteering, which I think is something we've talked about. No job, no ask would faze him. This 4-city tour was at a time when Letterman would still travel the show, so you can imagine there was just a lot more to be done. And we were on a crazy schedule. It was like 4 Thursdays and Fridays in a month, right? In 4 different cities. So there was just a lot of added work to be done. And even today, there's a handful of people who, for me, are like Ro in that what presents first, in addition to their extreme talent across a lot of realms, is, they always just, we've talked about it elsewhere, they've always just volunteered. They're the first to say, sure, I'll do. And if they don't know how to do it, they know they will figure it out, right? The Howard Stern thing is a great example because it was the first of many experiences I've had on an early version where we were underpowered relative to the competition, but it actually enabled so much creativity, encouraged creativity to know that we were outmanned, right? And it also helps, not that you're going to have this in every case, but as is usually true with shows, the boss sets the tone. And in this case, it was Howard. And Howard is one of the best examples I've ever encountered of not really caring about hierarchy and truly believing a good idea is a good idea, and not assuming, oh, it can only come from my EP and writers. You know, he couldn't have cared less that Rohit had never done this animation before. In addition to EP, Howard just genuinely loved the idea and the execution. And if I remember right, it was when you were playing around, Flash animation was at a phase where you were using it on websites.
Yep.
But we hadn't steadily figured out how to port it over for broadcast quality, right?
Absolutely.
So in addition to, he wasn't really an animator, but he trained himself. He saw the opportunity around this one story, and it's really gratifying for me to see your faces as he's telling you, and you're having that same reaction of, hell yeah, that would be a good idea to get to see some version of that brought to life, right? But then you also had the technical thing, which you really just hacked your solution for, which is how the hell do we get it? And it sounds crazy now, but then it was like, how do we get it off your computer in a way that we can show on CBS-owned broadcast stations?
I love that you're saying this. It was, I mean, throwing some stuff out, it was early versions of Flash. Does anyone here use Flash or familiar with it? Even editing, it was, you have to export as, I think it was like 13,000 bitmap files to bring into the Avid that they would then like pull into a QuickTime file, and it was nuts how you did it. Yeah. So and to be broadcast quality. So we figured that out.
I remember, by the way, several days during that stretch, first asking, "Where's Ro?" and repeatedly being told he's still at home. And then it got to a point where I did get an email from you, and it was literally about the export, and I kept bugging you every several hours, and it was like 3 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, right? And I don't even, did we have broadband, or were we still over dial-up?
No, we were Earthlink dial-up, but I think even like at the office, maybe we were faster.
Right.
But it was zip drives.
Right.
Old zip drives.
Yep.
But yeah, look, I mean, what Mitch was saying too, like, you guys brought me on. Not even to work on the show. And I think I didn't, little pay, but it was like come in the offices and watch the tapes. Watch, like, what Howard would do is we would tape all the meetings. And just see if there's some ideas you can come up with, and what can you do on the show. Sort of in a way carved out a spot for myself.
Yes. Right.
But that's how, like,
and again, to Howard's credit, part of his creativity is this was before everybody was taking as a given that you would do behind the scenes of your own show. His idea really was no more complicated. He had already put cameras in his radio studio a couple of years earlier. Do you guys remember, probably when you were very young, that E! Show, which was just cameras on Howard's radio studio? Does that ring a bell at all?
I've seen it online.
Yeah, so he had that. So at least he was in a mindset. But when we started doing this other show, it was his idea to go, guys, let's just handheld shoot our own weekly production meeting. We used it a little bit, but it was more just as another possible source of inspiration, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
And now you would say, well, it's a given. You would do it all on your phones anyway. You'd go, there's almost no cost to this. Why not?
Right.
Right.
At that time, we had camera crews, and everyone's like setting up in the room. But yeah, it was a very creative time. I think it was, the opportunity was there for the taking. So if you could just come up with some solutions or creativity, and Howard, you're right, it was, the creative room was everyone on staff. So you would get in the room, I think it was Thursdays or whatever the meeting was, and anyone who had an idea, if you were brave enough to raise your hand and know that, like, it was a jokester's room, so you were gonna get something in. But it was awesome. It was excellent.
And Howard, if you ever get to work for him, is, and in addition to his phenomenal skill as a broadcaster, is actually a phenomenal producer also. Like, a lot of the writers would sort of, as writers do, just react to the joke or not. But Howard would instantly, like, visualize and express either what would or wouldn't work, or his pitch to make it more for the show.
Right. You know, I think this will be applicable to everyone here, is we have a lot of talent coming to me, so I'm just jumping, current day what I'm doing. I meet with a lot of writers, producers, but mostly like comic talent, actors. You know, they're always pitching me TV shows. I say this to everyone who comes through. If you have a good point of view and you're authentic to what you want to do in your show and your writing, It's obviously it's going to be so much better. You can answer every question. You can come up with any solutions. You can produce anything you want. And Howard has the most genuine point of view. He's authentic to it. I think he's one of the best interviewers there is in the business, or ever, because you know he'll learn the person who comes in the room. If he doesn't know that person, he will ask all the right questions to get to know you. And if he knows who you are, he knows your history, so he can go in on any sort of question. So you're just gonna get a completely genuine interview and sort of point of view.
Right.
But I think that applies to everything. Like, you know, as far as I know, everyone in here is a writer. You're producing things. So just when you have that genuine point of view, it's just gonna be, it's gonna be tremendous. I know. Look, we're all gonna take jobs to write in something else.
Yeah.
And you're gonna produce things that maybe it's not like, oh, this is my ideal thing. But you know, if you're focusing on what you really want to do and what you're gearing up towards, just write from what you know.
So I want to get obviously to the current position, but if you could summarize then the next several years of how, after Howard, how you capitalized and broadened what you did.
Yeah, took animation, started making, so I may have written this, I don't know if it's in the bio, I own 97 URLs. And it was at the time, I started buying them, and I didn't have enough money to buy any, trust me, like nothing. But I wanted to start making cartoons, because I was doing it on the show. So I said, I'm just gonna start doing this on my own. If you're an animator, no one has to give you any money. You can do everything by yourself. You're your own writer, you're your own voices. You don't have to rely on getting a staff or anything, it's you. So I started making cartoons, like my first one. I don't know if I should even, you know what? It was called Farts Equal Funny. I can't believe I just told you guys that. But that's where I started, and I would just make simple, goofy fart cartoons. And it caught on, and then I started doing something called I made this in 1 hour.com, because I just wanted to work for 1 hour a day. And it worked for a while, and I would sell t-shirts, and I would do that. Anyways, what that did is it sort of opened up like a lot of writers, a lot of producers started to take notice and said, oh, can you do this for us? And can you do this over here? Along the way, I learned how to edit. So that took me eventually to Best Week Ever at VH1 and started writing. I got brought on to initially write there, but what I ended up doing was I ended up doing bestweekever.tv. And because the executive producer, by the way, created Cheers, or not created, sorry, wrote for Cheers, wrote for Letterman. Same sort of style as I think he and I had similar styles of just doing stuff and making stuff, whether it's television, linear or digital. So he had made the jump to digital.
Excuse me, that was Fred, right?
That was Fred Graver.
By the way, just a parenthetical, this guy, Fred Graver, of whom Rohit speaks, is now the head of television at Twitter. So he's had a very unconventional career, but keep that in mind, because guys like that and women are worth connecting with if you just have a sense that they may have these odd paths and it could be fun to be with them on all or part of it.
Yeah, so he became like a buddy and sort of a guiding voice in the digital sphere. So he's a TV, that's what he is, Twitter's TV evangelist.
Right.
That's what they call him. So he actually said, come on board to bestweekever.tv, and I just want you to make stuff. I see you can make cartoons. I see you, or actually he thought I could edit. That's where it happened. He's like, you can edit, and I actually thought, I had no idea. I've never edited before. But he said, I want you to make Photoshop. I just want you to do whatever you can and give us content for Best Week Ever. Here's the sensibility. You know what the sensibility is. So he hired me, and in that room, I sat in a room with, you guys know Michelle Collins, or she's on The View now, or Sarah Schaefer. There's Alex Blagg, who did At Midnight. There's Nikki Glazer's show. So like we were all in this little room, or in this like these 2-3 rooms. I had an edit system, and you just made stuff all day long. All you did was make videos, graphics, whatever. The first video I had to do was with Jenny Slate, with Gabe Liebman. So I'm name dropping right now, but they were all starting in a way of like just trying to get on. Like they were doing this thing called Best Night Ever. So just wrap that up, is we were just making content. So this was now in the digital world, and we were new to it.
Now, I was going to add in, I don't know exactly what would be the equivalent today, but there's a lot to be said for being in the right place at the right time. I think that was true with Howard, it was true with Fred and Best Week Ever. But it was also, Fred was smarter and I think more ahead than most in seeing that there should be this separate website. There were already websites, obviously. What year was this when you went there?
It was 2000, let's say 2005, 6.
Right, but so you had the beginning of social and digital video sites, but you didn't yet have the iPhone, you didn't have an app-driven world, you didn't have Roku and Apple TV, etc. But in a good way, Fred saw where these were going, and I will say, as creatives, if you're able to find yourself to the place that you feel is going to be the coming place or the more fun, or where somebody would not only let you but encourage you, it's, other people, especially who had come from television, probably older than you with more experience, would be disdainful of, oh, I don't want to work on the website, the show's the thing. You were at just the right age and the right degree of creativity that for you, the website in many ways was better than being on the TV show.
Yeah, I did argue with myself. I wanted to be a writer. That was going to be one of my first writer jobs, because up until then I was doing producer jobs, but I knew I wanted to just write. Like I knew that I was starting to see the dividing line in television where you're a producer and you do this, but writers, at a time it was like, I get to sit in that room and goof off with like those, 5 other people. That's what I want to do.
And people bring in food periodically.
And people bring in food just to say, keep going. But just seemed like it was more authentic to what I did. But yeah, Fred and I, we actually went back and forth where I said, I don't want to do this digital. What is this? Like we honestly, it was called a vertical. That's what we were calling them. So every show had to have its vertical. And he was the first to do it. And the vertical meant the digital representation. Like, what are you going to do online to support that TV show? But he really laid it out and said, I just want you to have fun. Just sit here and make stuff. So reluctantly, I went in, hand behind my back, and I was like, ah. But it turned out to be one of the best situations. I had not gotten a master's. I had already gotten a PhD at Howard, so I call that my master's. I went back, master's in digital. But yeah, we didn't know anything. We didn't, at the time, even like H.264 on QuickTimes. We sort of just stumbled upon that and figured out how to get stuff online. We were doing Yahoo video, YouTube, but Viacom was in a big legal disagreement with YouTube. So you weren't supposed to do that. We were starting to do stuff for iTunes, and Apple would come to us and showed us how to get everything onto an iPod, old iPod, the circle iPods. So yeah, we were just at the forefront of all of that at the time, and it was just go, figure it out. And we were figuring out, so that's where I met my business partner, Rafael Rodriguez. We were both the editors on bestweekever.tv, let loose to sort of do whatever, like I said, do whatever we wanted. But we figured out a lot of stuff there, like how to export something and get it under 100 megs at the time, so that you could upload it to Yahoo. And then, that number started dropping. But it was, how can you do this in the most optimized way? And how can you get content out every day, which was pretty nuts.
Yeah. By the way, this is also just a precursor to, in about a month or so, I've got a producer coming to visit as a class guest who has shifted to be a product manager. And I don't want to get into that now, but in a way, for those of you who are so inclined, if you like the tech stuff, pay attention to the examples that Ro is using, because there are those versions now, there will be in the future. And even if you don't, there is probably some other aspect of the business that you're interested in and or bring value in that will be the equivalent of the tech stuff you guys had to keep solving, because I think we've talked about it a bit. We'll do so more in the coming weeks. I think that you guys are coming of age professionally at a great time, and some people will be a little bit daunted by the added responsibilities of being producers. I think that you all are more likely to embrace them, but especially if you go in understanding that, in a good way, the job of producer is getting even more complicated because there's more stuff to pay attention to, educate yourself about, find help in, find specialists in, et cetera, et cetera. And you guys were solving those problems as they arose.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know, all these things we learned along the way, like I think, so everyone, guys and girls all looking to be showrunners eventually, is that what the goal is? You know, everything we picked up along the way, I say we, like myself and just like business partners and other producers, you eventually have used all of that. Like, it's so good to have done all of these things. You know, I have friends who are writers who are showrunners right now who don't know how an edit works. They don't know how the digital side works. So I would say if you know, a good complete showrunner, I looked at Mitch as one of the best, is because you know everything. You've experienced the digital side, the linear side, everything, the business side. So
yeah, and I don't want to, you know, make it sound like I may have used the term here. One of the things I like about, you know, professionally, your generation coming up, and I see it on the scripted side, I see it on the news side, is I think you all are more inclined to be sort of Swiss Army knives, that you have all the tools available. Now, I don't mean that literally as in you have to be equally good at everything, but to at least understand what the desirable tools in the toolkit are, you know? And it's not that it would be today the best use of Ro's time to figure out today's compression challenge, right? But to know enough to know you solved a version of it 10 years ago. And whether it just gives you a certain facility with having that conversation now about bit rates or whatever it is, or quite frankly, the knowing that someone can't bullshit you about it, right? That if somebody's complaining, that's an insurmountable obstacle, you can just say, I know it's not, right? I've solved for that, right?
Yeah. Elon Musk is very big on that type of micromanagement. He's like an expert in every field and the things that he invests in.
Exactly.
So you read articles about, you know, all of his subordinates who get these like visits from him that they're not expecting.
Right.
You know, he really just like calls them out on all their bullshit because
I bet he genuinely enjoys it too. Not calling people out.
Well, it's just that he's someone who has the capacity to like know so much about all these different things. And,
right.
Like, I feel like a lot of people start down that road and ending up a sort of jack of all trades, master of none.
Right.
And, you know, never really find their calling. But, you know, if you stick to your passions, you know, like the ultimate goal.
Well, you know, I think it's, Dave, I think it's like, and I'll say this for everybody, but especially for the women in the room, you know, in the same way that you likely have had to deal with, will deal with, people not necessarily saying it as they would have in the old days, but the old mentality of, oh, don't worry your pretty little head over that, still exists, right? It comes out in one way or another. And I think in addition to the implicit sexism of it, I think in a way, you're all gonna deal with that because there are still people on the business side who, as creatives, will be saying to you, don't worry your pretty little head over that. There will be a presumption that you may be wonderfully creative, but that you don't know or you're not expected to know about the business. And I think you're frankly more powerful. And you know, I point to people of your generation, you're a great model of it, but still in some ways the exception, not the rule. I think you all are more the rule, and hopefully this program is enforcing it where, again, that doesn't mean that you will be the ones literally negotiating all your deals, you know, but to have understanding of how your deals are negotiated or what the important things are to get, whether it's with unions or with studios or with overseas rights or advertisers or whatever, that you understand the discussion and what's at stake from a business standpoint and can, again, not presume expertise, not look to bullshit people yourselves, but let them know you more than have a place at the table in all these conversations.
Yeah, I think it's, I would say yes. You know, I think you were, she mentioned that you were on walkies on sets, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
like I remember at a certain point I would have killed to have been on a walkie on a set because I had never been on a set. I was doing all these productions that were like behind the scenes and post production. So when I finally got to do something like that, it was just taking advantage of like back to like knowing what every position does and just having done all like I love that everyone in this room and everyone who like I work with, they're younger and their Swiss Army knives is such a good example or sort of phrase of what to call them. Which is awesome to know that you would have all these skills. But when I got to do walkies, I was like, oh, so this means I get to listen on to what the AD is saying, to what the project, production manager is saying, and I would walk around and see it and hear it. And I was learning, like I was always taking advantage of whatever position I was put in.
Yeah.
Plus, Rebecca, as you know, if we can all step away, if you're not jaded yet, for many people, right, having access to the walkies is sort of the coolest thing on the set anyway, because for most people, like, if you're not of that world, just having a walkie, right, is you, like, that's your marker of now you're in show business, right, if you have a walkie on a set. Exactly, right.
Well,
that's how powerful it is, right?
That was fun about being the walkie PA is that I was the enforcer. I walked around with my cop sunglasses.
Yeah.
Shit out of people. It was fantastic.
Exactly. Your tape matters, your writing of names on tape matters, all that stuff.
No,
right?
yeah, but the stupid thing is like my first walkie PA job I picked up, they hired me to do it. They bumped me up because the guy that did it totally fucked it up. And so like I couldn't look bad but like off that job, that was Madam Secretary season 1. And we were missing 18 walkies at Wrap Out. 18 walkies.
Yeah.
It took some serious finagling to like get them to drop the price of what we'd have to pay. But it's like the walkies. Were you on Channel 1 when you were PA?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, Channel 1. So it's nice when you can like be on set and not be on Channel 1.
Right.
That's
So quick question for you, because I'm always, and this varies by production. Just your own educated guess, right?
Right.
How many were stolen? How many were people just spaced out and walked out with them?
No, it's not stolen because the walkie PAs, they know to mind their P's and Q's. And so like even like if you're out in town and stuff like that, like you put it always in a very safe place. But it's mostly like day players come, and when you're out on location, like we did a lot of stuff like up in the mountains and stuff in Sleepy Hollow, and it's like they take it off and put it down and forget to pick it back up, and then it's out at locations. If locations doesn't find it, it's gone.
Yeah.
And so like it was always props, man, always props. They had some dopey props guy that would come, and they kept bringing him back. And like there's this one guy that lost 2 walkies because they kept bringing him back. I was very upset. Very upset.
By the way, that correlates with my experience as well. But it's not like the dopiness is necessarily forgivable if that's your job. I say it only because you'd like to be, again, not cynical and think that it's stolen, but there's just no end to people's dopiness, especially when it's not their job.
Right.
Right, which is why, good thing that was your job.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's always like I called it my like at the end of the night like my walkie freak out. Like my key would come up to me, he's like, "Can you do something?" I was like, "No, I'm on my walkie freak out right now. Like just leave me alone." We have to bounce from truck to truck to truck to truck to collect all of the ones back.
Yeah.
But it's.
See, and I will share with you, you're probably this way, you will be this way. Not that I want anyone to have to suffer through a walkie freak out, but as a showrunner, that's what I want.
Oh yeah.
I want somebody taking that job, and every job they do that seriously, that's the zone they are in at the right time of night.
And it's when it just gotta get it. This is my job. This is what you just. That's the one thing I learned the most from being a PA is that you have to play your position. You have to know what your role is, and you have to play that role. Don't try to overstep. Don't understep. Don't try to do someone else's job. Do your job and do it very well. People will notice and just be and just make people like other side of PAs just like make people laugh. Just keep everyone in a good mood. You know, just be like a positive presence. Make everyone happy, smile. They should smile when they look at you. That kind of thing. Just
and you raise a great point on so many levels, and I just want to add in I agree with you about knowing your position and doing it exceedingly well. I agree with you, especially about the element of just be these are long hours where people are getting cranky. Just be a face they want to see for whatever reason. Just that you bring good cheer, you bring a laugh, whatever, and you're great at your job. But also, all the other stuff we talk about how you use your skills and your presence to get what you want. part of the fine art I've come to believe is how do you satisfy the first two and then do the third in addition, but never have it be her next thing. But she's actually not doing the job she was hired for well. It has to be, you know what, I like that she's smart and she's letting me know what she wants and she's doing her job exceedingly well.
Yeah.
Not that I ever feel, but she's taken her eye off the ball of the job that I am now paying her to do.
Right. That's the
That's-
hardest thing ever.
There, in terms of social currency and sort of knowing, you know, the value you can bring, don't underestimate the need to do the first job, the main job that is your job right now, exceedingly well.
Yeah, because it just takes stress off so many people.
Yeah.
If they can rely on you to just do your job.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's
In
incredible.
one of my last showrunner jobs, it was one of the most recent ones. It was, I love this, is one of the guys on staff, he was a PA, Ben, and we had a writer's room, and he wanted to be a writer. He wasn't a writer's PA, he wasn't a writer's assistant. He came to me and he said, can I just sit in on the writer's meetings? I have stuff to do. If I have to leave, like, first of all, is it cool if I sit in there? And I had that moment of like, well, you have stuff to do, but yes, but don't, are you done with your stuff? He said, I do have stuff to do. I said, it's okay for you to get up in the middle and leave and do your thing. What he actually ended up doing was incredible. He proactive about it. He sat in the writers' meetings and he started transcribing the meetings because he noticed that we were riffing and all these jokes were coming like flying around, but no one was really gathering them. Our writer's assistant was participating and not really gathering everything. So Ben just sat there and backed up the writer's assistant. Ben eventually became a writer. I quickly was like, you should be the writer's assistant next season. That writer's assistant had left. So then he started like just writing and now he's a writer. So I think what he did was proactive in those meetings, but was responsible enough to say to me, because he knew my head was in like thinking about a lot of things. He said, I may have to get up during the thing because I have something to do at like 12:30, whatever time. I said, that's totally great. Actually, psyched that you said something like that. So take advantage.
And you know what, if I can add
being
on, I'm
professional.
realizing, I think it's a great example, and I'm thinking of a colleague I have now at the production company that I'm currently at, who in many ways is exactly that. She started as a younger producer and happened to be very good at just that as well, and participating, which to me is always a difficult thing, where you can both transcribe. And it's really funny because even though she's now advanced to a senior producer level, she still does it. And it's really funny because I'm a little bit conflicted, and I've talked to her about it because since she's a woman, I'm also very sensitive to, I don't want you just doing the girl jobs. I mean, let's be brutally honest about that. Again, there's a sexist element to all this, but that is outweighed by my really liking the fact that she continues to do it because she knows how valuable it is and how often we go back to meeting notes, even though it would have been fine that at a professional level, she could have said, not my thing anymore. Right? But in the grand sense, far better that she's, as the people like you and that the people who keep saying, yeah, I can handle it, I got it, I can do this and do my other stuff, keep adding more, will always prove their value.
Just one more right now, current position, there's someone I work with and she transcribes all our meetings, but now I have her sit in on pitches and I have her sit in on just creative meetings with me. And actually I sit there sometimes when people pitch and I may not know how to say it, but she's transcribed everything from our meeting. So she knows the right sort of wordings and has digested so much stuff that now I turn to her and I'm like, so do you want to tell them what the thing is? So she has she's got it. And,
Right.
And I know
Have you gotten to the point of saying, do you want to tell them what I'm thinking?
I've said you want to, yes. I'm like, you want to start the meeting off and like,
Wait, what's her name?
Maritza?
You know her?
I know Maritza.
Yeah.
Have you with her?
You know her?
Yeah.
Wow.
At True TV?
No,
Oh,
you don't
I
know.
might actually.
That's bullshit. Just
Yeah.
but,
Where did you PA with her?
the Get Down.
Do you remember if she was at, there aren't that many Maritzas,
I
right?
will ask her.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
That's great.
Uh,
What's your last
Is that, actually, Ro, is that a good chance? I don't mean to skip over
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
but is it a good opportunity to shift to where you're at now?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Just by way of background, because I remember when Rohit first told me about this opportunity, and I'll say with him sitting here, he is such a creative and successful guy for the reasons I think you can sense. He would have been totally fine to stay on the track he's been on of a successful creative producer who's managed to have more variety in either what he creates or is asked to create for others. You know, you look at the genres you've done, most people are led to specialize, you've covered more.
Yeah.
You've been a writing showrunner, et cetera, but then you made a conscious decision, what, about a year ago, to go to a network and be a buyer.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we get to the particulars of what you're doing now, can you just walk people through what your thought process was at the time, what the misgivings were, what the pluses were, and why you landed on, yeah, I'm gonna try this?
Yeah, so I want to sum up something too. Like after digital and all that, I started a production company, and we started doing projects for all sorts of digital outlets and TV, even every now and then small budgets. But we were just having a ball creating. So that was the root of it. Is we were really just producing on our own terms, and we were writing a lot, being as creative as we could and pitching stuff. I eventually then started.
And can I add in, you guys you were steadily getting more work.
Yes.
Which sounds really obvious, but I want to underscore that's really hard. You know, you all know it as individual freelancers, but as a company, the sales aspect of how you keep stuff in the pipeline is really hard.
It's incredibly hard, and you have to pound the pavement, and you're doing you're a freelancer, but now you're doing it for your company and a bunch of other people who sort of rely on like working with you because they're having a good time as well, and things are working out. I was double dipping. I was doing a lot of like writing on the side, so like I would write TV shows, I would write pilots, I would do things like that. So started becoming a showrunner, and here's where the offer came, is do you want to now take all this creativity of what I thought it was, like being creative, running around trying to get jobs, different types of jobs, so you're not just doing one thing, you're saying, okay, I'm at MTV right now, then I'll go to True TV the next day, then Animal Planet may ask you to write something, you might be a showrunner for another project, and do I want to just drop all that and go to the other side of the table now and work for one network, very focused, one sort of, it's smaller in a sense of like, creatively you're focused. Now it's a cable network, and you want to now, you're not selling anyone, you're instead just buying ideas, and you're helping develop and cultivate, meeting talent. So I wrestled with that, and there's an element of freedom when you're the writer, you're the showrunner, and you're freelancing, which was awesome. And then there's the element of structure. Structure means like consistency. You're not actually pounding the pavement, and you're not out there trying to get different jobs. And there is sort of like you're working with a bigger collective on launching a network. And we were rebranding True TV at the time. We still are right now. So that's where I was. It was sort of the pluses and minuses were, I think the pluses on the freelance side was, again, flexibility, creativity, trying different projects, and then can I talk the pluses now on the network side? So I'm almost 8-9 months in. I think it's awesome. I think it's and I think it's because I've learned from guys like Mitch, where you're put in a scenario, you absorb that scenario, and you learn as much as you can in that scenario, and take all the things you've learned and try to add them in here. So the pluses here are, I'm meeting people, I'm meeting all of you now, and you're coming in and you're pitching, and I'm meeting writers, I'm meeting I'm talent, hearing ideas. So when people are pitching me now, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, for years they told me, you don't have to come in with a big presentation and a pitch and song and dance, just give me a log line. And I was like, there's no way you're gonna buy something off of a log line. Like, there isn't. But what you get to learn is there's a development process. So there are so many incredible positives of what I'm doing right now, and I think it's only going to make me better for whatever the next thing is.
I wanted to take a little bit of a detour because last week, just by way of contrast, we were lucky enough to have Christine Legrano from IFC as a guest.
Yeah.
And so her experience, 20 years at the same place, and she and the network were together in terms of the strategy, happily in a way that's worked for them, by which they committed to, starting as independent film channel, then being just the initials IFC, committing to comedy and a certain kind of comedy and building to it, and now have had a bunch of successes. So if you for the moment step away from just your role in it, but how would you describe to this group what the particular creative challenge is that True TV has set for itself?
Yep.
In terms of developing this original programming?
Yeah, does anyone know, is everyone familiar with True TV, what they are and what they're doing? I mean, they used to be Court TV. So there's been like the evolution of the network, like IFC.
I don't know if I mentioned, but if anyone is watching the OJ miniseries, that thing that was showing the trial live was Court TV.
Yeah.
And weirdly enough, that's who Rohit that works for. I mean, it's gone through many, many iterations since then.
Crazy iterations. Like, so it went from Court TV, then they lost Court TV, they became True TV, which was really reality television. I mean, they would do all sorts of programs. I can't even remember most of them. But when I came in, I was a showrunner for them on World's Dumbest. It was like a clip show, and you would bring on cast members to sort of like enhance the clips. And then I started doing pilots for them. So what we're doing now is we are rebranded as 100% a comedy channel. So we have stuff like Billy on the Street, Adam Ruins Everything. We're starting to do scripted now, and there's a show called Those Who Can.
Right.
So it's really like we're cementing ourselves in the comedy world. Here are the challenges. We're going up against, there's a lot of networks now that do this. So there's IFC, who don't do it full time yet. They're they're still they have this business model that works. There's Comedy Central, which is, they're my colleagues, they're my friends, they're people I've worked with throughout the years, and they know what they're doing, and they have a sensibility, and we have a sensibility. But there's also now networks like CISO, there's Hulu, there's Netflix. So we have all these other sort of networks that we're, I guess, competing with in a way. Even internally, we're Turner TVs. Turner owns us, broadcasting, so we have TBS, which there's like-minded sensibilities there. So our challenges are, how do you cement yourself in your space and get an audience and have that audience feel engaged and want them, hopefully they keep coming back to you.
Right.
It's all going to point back to what actually I mentioned earlier, is having an authentic point of view. And it's sort of saying like, Adam ruins everything. Adam is the only dude who can ruin everything. Like I've been in a writer's room with him, and that is what he does. It's natural to him. It's, that's how his comedy comes about. Billy on the Street. You can try to put someone else in Billy's role, but Billy owns that role. Like, that is who he is. He's been doing it for 12 years or 13 years or however many years. So if you look at all our shows that we're sort of putting out now, that is the whole sort of mission statement. Comedy Central loves to do stand-up. We're not going to compete and do stand-up. So we're going to find different ways to tell stories that could, let's say there's a different way to do stand-up. Is there a way to get a stand-up to tell their stories, but not getting up on stage with a microphone and telling their stories?
We think about something like the Ricky Gervais show, which is exactly like what you were describing for Howard Stern, where they're just like a few guys sitting in a studio talking about things, and it just becomes this animation that is going on.
First things first, I'd go, "Arr," because I was trying to pitch an animated talk show, and I still am. It's on my phone. It's what I dream of doing. It's the Larry Sanders Show meets Letterman, but animated. As I was pitching mine, every single network would say, "Hey, you, Ricky Gervais, do you know those guys that just came in?" I'm like, "I know Ricky Gervais, but they were just in here a week before you." I was literally, that's how it worked out. So they were telling stories, and because I had done something similar for CBS.com. Yes, but to just go back to that, yeah, it's that's a different way to do stuff. To tell like stand-up stories and to just relay those messages, and like it's basically, what's another way to tell funny stories? So I thought that was like, I think it's genius to do that.
So as you think about those competitors, you probably develop a shorthand for creative people, for agents, for whoever, to say, this is what we're going for.
Yep.
You can use now the examples of the shows you have.
Yep.
Do you find yourself more saying, we're not this, or we are that? And if so, what is your shorthand? How, you know, if they are all, not everybody here is focusing on comedy, but let's just say for the exercise that they are, if you're at a place where you're trying to get them to come to you and not go to Adult Swim or Comedy Central,
Yeah.
what's your shorthand? What do you say, this is what we're going, how do you say this is what we're going for?
I mean, actually, we would say, we want to be anything you're pitching, any of those other outlets, we would like to see those too.
Okay.
But you do say this, like at the root of everything, we want this to be funny. And funny that speaks to a broader audience. Like, so a lot of the different shows on different networks, like even like Comedy Central, I think they're hilarious, but they are definitely speaking to just a certain sort of, I don't want to call it a niche group, but a smaller group. We would love to do something that's broader and something that this is something a lot of the sort of, I'd say, mission statement there is fun. Like, you know, at the root of any of these projects, there needs to be like a fun aspect to it. It needs to feel relatable. So if you're gonna, and we're not in the scripted, and we're not like diving into scripted right now. We're only doing 1 to 3 a year. So in that one, you can be more focused on like stories that are a little more detailed and on sort of pointed towards a group or a person. But with our general shows like game shows, I just put a game show that just got through, and it's I don't know if anyone here would remember a show on MTV. I don't think you would. Remote Control.
Really? Okay. All right. I'm impressed. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. But we're doing a game show like that, or at least we're developing it right now. And at the root of it, the way I pitched it, I was like, it's remote control. It's just fun. It's just a simple trivia game. You'll have goofy walk-on characters. So I think the way we would tell the agents or any producers who come in is like, you want to do something that's relatable to everyone, and it's just a good time. You're going to have fun watching this.
Yeah.
What would be the differentiation like between a scripted show and a non-scripted show when it comes to the writer's room? Like, I mean, I understand that it'd be less or more in a certain place, but like, would you say is the difference in tone or how it just functions?
Yeah, it depends on the show. But then, you know, what type of show it is as
Right.
well. But like the tone of the room, is that what you're asking?
Well, I mean, yeah, any information you can give me, honestly.
So when you're in a scripted show, I've only gotten to do this a couple times where it's a collective and you're targeted on something where you're saying, okay, this is what's going to happen in episode 1. Rohit, you're in charge of episode. Let's what's going to happen through the season. What's going to happen in season 2? What's going to happen in season 3? So we'd be writing all over the walls and say, here's what season 1's arc looks like. Here's what season 2's arc looks like. Somewhere along the way, I might be like, well, what if the character meets this taxi driver and they go off on this adventure and this is where it takes, and I put that together. I would take that on as my episode,
Right.
but we're all going to be shooting ideas to me for that episode.
Right.
So the tone on a scripted show, it's definitely more, actually I'd say this is the same for non-scripted as well. It's just a collective going in on something. I hope I'm answering this.
You are.
I'm just curious, in the case of, say, Billy's show,
Yeah.
as a particular, do you have writers on the show?
Yeah, there's
Okay.
writers.
Are they actually credited as writers, or do you have to do the trick of giving them other titles?
I'm not sure on that show. It might be like
Okay.
consultants or story producers.
Right.
Depends on the type of production you're
Right.
doing. Like, you know, Letterman it was union.
Right.
It was SAG. It was Writers Guild. So
Right.
you had writers.
Right.
Silent Library, it was union on portions of the production for MTV. I was a writer on that, but there's
Okay.
been other shows where you're a consulting producer or story editor.
So in the case of Billy's show, is it more pitching around settings in which he and people that he might interact with, but not actually scripting his stuff, right?
I haven't been in that writer's room, but just knowing how those sort of shows work, I think it would be, okay, where are we gonna go? Like, that's, maybe that's working with the producer and being like, we can go on Fifth Avenue, we can work in the park, we can do this. So it's just good to generate ideas. Where can we put Billy? But then, yes, absolutely, you would start to come up with trivia. What would, what type of
Right.
questions might he ask on the street?
Mhm.
You could come up with and jokes. Jokes are a part of it. Like, I know on a lot of these shows, it's jokes.
Right.
Like, even World's Dumbest, which was a clip show, it was, what can our cast member come on and say?
Right.
So you would script that whole, like, you might script a sketch.
Mhm.
So, or you might even just give jokes to the performers.
Mhm.
Right.
You would hope the writers or the performers come on with their own jokes, having watched the material and
Right.
done that. So I think that would apply to all shows.
I mean, like, thinking the Thanksgiving Day parade thing that Billy did.
Yes.
That required writing jokes, right, for the bit to work.
Yes.
You wouldn't have wanted to just throw them out there and said, make up fake Thanksgiving float facts,
Now I think
right?
all of these, yes, he's gonna come armed with as many facts as he can, digest and have in his arsenal, and then also jokes. Like for any of these shows, for Howard, for Letterman, for all of these, any show you watch, there's going to be a writer's room writing all the jokes they can possibly get out there. To just, it's tough. Like there are certain people, Oberman. On the other hand, Oberman, I had launched that or helped launching that show. He would write everything because he's to camera and he's with any guests that come on, he would have researchers and segment producers to help give facts and everything. But in terms of like these comedy shows or game shows or hosted shows, yeah, you're writing. Your job as a writer is as many jokes as you can put out there for he or she, the host, to go through and be like, love this, love this, love this. So
yeah, and it like reeks of like a writer's assistant too, because just the amount of research that we have to go into, like just I hate to keep talking about Billy, but just like when he does like those rapid fire question things, like he did like Jew or not a Jew the other day, where like obviously there's a writer's assistant and they're looking up who's Jewish and who's not Jewish.
Of
So
course,
it's just kind of like yeah. So
but that bit definitely came from the room. Someone in the room said something, and then it hooked, and now that's going to be an ongoing bit.
okay.
But he has such he genuinely loves pop culture and all of this, so he's coming armed with stuff.
Right.
So you can riff. It's easier to riff then.
Right.
So would you say it's like a smaller room for a non-scripted show? So it's just more concentrated, but
Depends on the size of the production.
All right.
Just depends on the size of the production, but like what your budget will allow you to hire. I know as a showrunner, when I get in, I'm always gonna go for editors and then writers. Like there's not one or the other. It's just like that's where I would love to put if I'm given a budget and said, Rohit, what do you need? Again, depends on the type of show you're putting together, but that's where I know if I have my material, it's great. And then I have my editors who I know can put this together.
Well, for like reality-based shows, most of the writing is in the editing. And I did this. We had to do a research paper for history of television last year, and I did reality TV just because the impact it's had on the writing world. And I found on the Writers Guild website that they actually allow producers of reality shows to be a part of the guild. In this specific little segment, and they just say like, oh yeah, I wanted to be a scripted showrunner or whatever, and I find I'm using all my storytelling skills that I learned in school.
This is the Writers Guild specifically, not the Producers Guild.
And it's interesting because you look at shows like Tosh.0, which is like seemingly very authentic and in the moment. But you have to know that when he's saying like, let's see how many things we can put on the clock, that he's just reading off a teleprompter.
Sure.
And like you said, they even show the writer's room on
Right.
I have friends who write for Tosh, and so what they'll do is you're given clips and you're writing jokes on the clips.
Yeah.
And or you're coming up with bits. Like how can you package 5 of these clips together? What would you title that? Or what's that segment called?
But then they also have all the people who are just scouring the internet for funny clips.
Those are researchers. Yeah, your researchers are out there, and that's what their job is, to find these clips.
Yeah.
So you would have a researcher's room like on Tosh. They must have, whatever number, it might be 5 to 10 researchers just finding these clips and licensing those clips.
Stephanie, did you have a question? Sorry, I thought I saw your hand up.
I did. I know like a lot of like people that are trying to produce comedy, they like look to like the internet. How much do you guys look to the internet when you're producing your comedy shows?
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, we're looking like, you're always using that as source material to say like, look what they've done. Knowing your budgets aren't gonna be like humongous,
Yeah.
sometimes zero.
Yeah.
You're pulling in favors and you're pulling in friends and you're doing 5 jobs to figure out, like you're shooting, you're writing, you're directing, you're editing. So yeah, we're looking constantly. So there's comedians who will come in and show me stuff that, they shot with their iPhone in the living room. They've done the best they can, and you sort of get the gist. You're like, oh, this is like good. At the core of it, when I watch those, I look to the writing.
Yeah.
And I say, okay, what's going on in this piece, and is the writing sort of elevating this concept? So yeah, we look to YouTube. We look everywhere. You're getting links constantly sent to you, like, have you seen this group? Have you seen this person performing? Now it's
And I'm curious, is it agents, is it people themselves who are pitching, or do you have people on staff whose job that is to be scouring the internet?
So my role is executive producer, programming, and development. So it's everyone. Our whole the whole group is doing programming and development. So everyone, you're sort of you have these weekly brainstorm meetings, and you're encouraged to show stuff. You're encouraged to say like, and everyone see this video? Let me show it to you. We always think, how hilarious is it that this person has no idea. We're in a room right now watching their video being like, I think that could be a TV show. But then it's agents sending it in. It's a lot of times it's the comedian or the writer or the producer themselves being like, Rohit, have you seen this? I just made this. So they are connecting. It's just because I've met them in the business and I've been on that other side. So I'm here to help develop those things. But yeah, you're getting it from everyone.
Right. Do you have, for instance, like, I don't remember if you're on Twitter, but are you aware of, you're not, but is anyone tracking like who's following the true feed with an eye toward just getting a follow back and then seeing if it's worth their looking at their feeds?
Yeah,
Okay.
and you're seeing who's commenting and are they participating a lot, and if they're throwing jokes out, like you're saying like, oh yeah, this person, maybe we should have them do something, or point them to a show we're doing so that they can start participating there.
Right.
And then let that production company say like, invite them in. It's rare. It's rare we haven't done that. Like I haven't been involved in that, but I'm always keeping an eye out for that, and I know our staff is as well.
Yeah. So a couple of minutes ago, you were talking about your own perception, having kind of switched sides about what doesn't work as a pitch form.
Yep.
So with all your years one way, and then this last year, what advice would you offer to everybody for now and also for down the road about pitch techniques?
So has anyone here pitched anything? Like, have you pitched? Have you gone through the practice of doing that?
You've done it in the program, right?
Yeah.
But not, I'm guessing not yet professionally to the outside world, right? Okay.
I have.
You have?
I did another script writing program when I lived in Ottawa in Canada. And we actually, at the end of our program, took a trip to Toronto and met up with basically, I think, an agent, a couple of Canadian networks, people there, and actually got to pitch like either or both, actually, a television show and a film that we've been working on.
Nice.
So that was the most experience I had.
Cool.
I think that's awesome. Is everyone here, I mean, I think we're all probably like-minded. Are you coming up with ideas constantly that you think could be good films, good TV shows? What do you do with those? I'm building to something, but what do you do with this? When you get those ideas, what do you do?
System. So Norman, our program director, recommended this book when we first joined the program called The Anatomy of Story. And in like the first chapter or something, it talks about this thing called a wish list, where it's just like anything that you feel passionate about that you're interested in, just make a list. And then I sort of like built on that a little bit, and I made like a concept development list that's like stuff that I have like taken from the wish list and moved into this development. And then I have like existing ongoing projects in another so I just like have this whole Google Drive that's like this like slow evolution of ideas, and sometimes when I'm just like writing something, I'll say like, oh, I need, you know, to write something funny, or I need a joke, and I'll just like go through the wish list, and I'll just be like, oh, remember that thing that Max said 2 years ago that was hilarious? Like that would fit right in here. And so, you know, we have, you know, phones and everything where everything's connected now, so I can have access to the same Google Doc, you know, really quickly. And if I see something on the train that's funny, I just write a little sentence. And I mean, that's pretty much how all my ideas get developed now. And I have like a whole, like, if I were to sit in a meeting with someone who's just like, I want to hear all your ideas, like it just
You could do it.
read it up.
Right. Anyone else? I'm just curious to know what homegrown systems you guys have come up with.
I'm sorry, I missed. I was about to talk about how I was given the option to pitch, but I never got to.
We'll come, hang on to that. No, I'm just curious, because I think I haven't thought to ask it. I think it's a great question. What is everything in your heads? Rebecca, what do you have?
It's just, I try to think of like maximum 2 sentences to describe it. Like
Okay.
if I can get it in 1 sentence, you
Good.
know what I mean?
Yep.
It's genius. And I use that as like a writing tool.
And where are you keeping it? Okay.
It's in
Now,
here.
what,
But
Sorry.
yeah, so that's really it.
Okay.
Just try to be as concise and clear as possible
Good.
in 1 sentence.
good.
Yeah, I think I have a similar system to David, except mine's a lot less organized. I have like 3 bajillion notebooks and then
Right.
like 3 apps on my phone that I note things down in.
Right,
I use
right.
Evernote a lot, but I'm on the subway.
Okay.
Yeah,
And then
so-
I'll have like a Google Drive too. So I just need to like go through and like condense everything.
Yeah.
By the way, if you
Happens to
like
me a lot.
Evernote, have you played around with? I don't know what your other ones are, but someone turned me on to Google Keep as like a purposely stripped down version of Evernote. Like it doesn't have as many features, but in a way that's good. It goes a little bit, Rebecca, more Google Keep. It's called.
Have you seen
Yeah.
MindNode?
Which
Have you heard
one?
of MindNode?
No, I like the name.
Yeah, no, it's great.
MindNode.
It's an app you can get on your computer, and it's it just makes webs. So it has like a central theme, and then you can
Oh, I
create
have heard
branches.
about this.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
fantastic.
I
There's a couple
so
more.
Yeah, and
It sounds like there are a couple more. There's Brain, something that's in that realm where it's almost designed for creative thinking,
Yeah.
not for
Like
organizing.
productive
But
creative.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
It's great. It's 30 best
Yeah.
videos ever.
I think, you know, before we leave it, I think the important thing is, and probably what Rohit is getting at, is no one system is better. The only thing that matters is what works for you, right? And even if it is scraps paper and then thrown in a shoebox, right? If that works for you, great. I do agree. The ability to express it and be able to go back to it. In your case, that notion of plugging in work you've already done is always good. Your element of discipline is great, and really honing in, because again, more often than not, if asked, you'll only have a brief period in which to tell someone to do the hard work in advance of really thinking, even if you haven't fully fleshed out all the details, but you know that idea is as tight as it can be and is really will grab somebody.
Yeah.
You know, that's hugely valuable.
It's I'm sorry, please.
Well, actually, because this is the reason I asked this is when I started, I put out, it was called Rohit's Notebook of Ideas. And that's what I gave to Mitch, to Vinny, to who became my lawyer, Stephen Mark. I just wanted them to see like, so I would suggest this, highly suggest this, for all these ideas you come up with, spend a half hour even, an hour, get it down into a treatment. Just get it down to 1 page. Ask your question. The first thing you should do is a log line, so that if you're in that elevator, if you're in wherever you are, you know how to say it very concisely. Like you can say like, here it is, here's the pitch. And related to other shows, it's like The Office meets this and this. But give what it is and answer your questions. Answer the who, what, whys, everything in there. Get it down on paper. Because what you're going to do is when you go into pitch, so this is what I've realized now, getting pitches, what you want to do is come in with a treatment, just a 1-page, something simple. Know that I'm not going to sit and read your treatment during the meeting. What I'm going to do is I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to hang out with you. I'm going to hear your pitch. I'm going to ask you questions. And I'm going to reference that 1 sheet. Well, if you start, I wish I had done this. If you start, done it even further, is beyond the notebook of ideas, just any idea you get, just spend an extra few moments to just get it down, the whole thing. And I promise you, you'll be so happy later on to add into that and edit that and fine tune it. And what I've learned is a really nice one page, something that's super clear, like visually, it looks good. You just know the gist of the show, front and back if you want. Something that you can just say like, look at this is a show. And then on your time, you should flush that out completely. Like, and go through the practice of doing that, because what that does is it answers every question. So in a pitch meeting, you'll never stumble. You'll always have an answer to that. Like whatever question, like me or my colleagues or she may throw out at you, you'd be like, I know the answer to that because I have a Bible behind this treatment that's like 5 pages, 6 pages. You know, you pick and choose which ones you want to write those Bibles for, but for those treatments, write them out for everything. You're all writers, so you can do it. It's easy. But get that one page down.
Not surprisingly, because we've obviously talked about it through the years, you know, I agree very much with Rohit on that, and I would throw in a couple other details. Whatever the format is, whether it's a hybrid, fully scripted, unscripted, that element of the full version for yourself is fantastic. And again, if you don't get hung up on needing to clean it up, but initially just let it be the receptacle for every idea you have. Stray casting ideas, stray production design, whatever it is. Even if that Bible is only for you and your immediate colleagues, let it grow as much as it needs to, right? I mean, especially these days where it's about, you know, burning electrons and not paper, you know, just keep going, right? But I equally agree with that discipline. I mean, the group that I work with now, we even joke about, we still call the kind of public version the one sheet, even if we occasionally let it bleed over into a second sheet, we still call it the one sheet, right? And I've actually gotten a little bit more, like lately, it's funny, we may disagree on this, when either we've been pitched to or we're out pitching, lately I've been like, no, I would never give you as the buyer something to, I don't want your eyes off of us. And I'm even reluctant, if I'm taking the lead, I have it committed to memory, right? And very often on our one sheets, depending on the timeliness of the idea, we may be updating it with very specific examples, let's say from today, you know, this week's news, almost before going into the meeting, right? But at a certain point, again, if it's me, with one of my colleagues who's great at pitching, but she does like for herself the reference of the one sheet, there I'm like, okay, you're the only person in the meeting who can have it. And like, at some point, if you're done, I'm going to take it out. I'm going to take it from your hands and put it away because I do not want to. Now, we plan, obviously, after the meeting. If it's gone well, we're going to email them that treatment. But that's when I then want them to look at it on their time.
Yeah,
right?
During a meeting, you want to engage them and you want to focus. And like, I agree.
Yeah.
I could go either way. It's like some people do bring me stuff.
Yeah.
But I think I'm good enough I think I am as an exec to just reference it, but just stay engaged.
Yeah.
And if they're referencing something, you know, we'll look. But I'm with you. If you can come in and you know your idea and just talk it through with us, it's the best.
Now, I know you obviously hear ideas across so many different genres and formats. Are there certain commonalities, though, of if you could distill it down to what information would you like them to deliver to you about the overall idea, season arcs, individual episodes, casting, if there's a way to do a little bit of a one-size-fits-all, realizing it doesn't, what would you say is the top line of what do they need to convey to you so that you can judge, is this a good idea, one we'd like to buy?
I'll just say scripted is one thing, because I've even gotten scripted pitches, which I love, is they won't give me the full script. They'll give me a scene. And right there, I'm like, oh, I totally get this character. I know who I know who he or she is. I know what's happening, and they'll end it. And in a way, I'm always like, can I read more? So like, I love those. So on the scripted side, I've seen stuff like a simple premise at the top. So it's like, here's the story. You know, Joe Blow he lives in an apartment building. He's got roommates. He's got people around him. So it's simple sort of premise. The overarching theme, I would say, is just like the simplicity of saying, this is what the show is. You know, it's a very simple way. What is the format of the show? Or so like your log line is there. That's a simple 1 to 2 to 3 sentences short. Then the next thing is, here's the format of the show. Or actually, I might even say, here's the concept of the show. It's a game show. It's a studio-based show. It's this, and gives me a little more details. And then the next thing is, what are some elements of the show? So I put that in elements or format. So format is, it's a reality show. It goes over, it's a half hour. It's going to do X, Y, and Z in the show. Here are some segments of the show. For me, that's really all I need.
Right.
Because I get, we're having a conversation, and then also you should get the gist of the show right there. So I would say, just quickly riffing on that, I would say that's the general stuff you should know, is like the log line, concept, and then format / segments in the show.
Yeah.
Missing something maybe?
I don't think so. And go ahead.
What's stuff that turns you off in those meetings? What's stuff that just ruins the thing?
That's awesome. That's a great question. Is when maybe they haven't done their homework as to what our network is or what we're looking for, or just even turned on the channel just to say, like, here's what's on the channel right now. Here's a sensibility. So when they come in and maybe still pitch a core TV show, then I know you haven't done the homework. That's the biggest one. It's like, or when someone came in and she was hilarious, and I just a simple thing like, hey, do you watch any of our shows? Totally. And just made up stuff where I was like, well, it's kind of funny what you're doing right now, but you really didn't know what was on the channel. Or came close to the names of the shows, the titles, like there's this magician, it's called the Carbonaro Effect, and she kept saying the Calipano. I was like, oh, you could get the name wrong, that's okay. But then saying like Billy something works the streets, and I was like, well, it's Billy on the street. But anyways, I knew they just did a quick reference.
Right.
But as far as the document they give, I love to read, but you get so many of these, so you don't want the 15-page or even the 5-page, just text. Now it's a day of like, visually we could do anything, and I know you guys can probably do anything too. Just make it visually engaging. So when it's just text and text, even a little color does go a long way. And this is all, by the way, it's per person.
Right.
But I'm a visual guy, so sometimes I just, simple, like if you have a host of the show, just drop the picture at the bottom and say, here's the host. You don't have to do anything fancy. And like this pitch I just put through, it was very simple. It's a game show. Here's the trivia questions you would see on the show, and here's the host, and here's the premise. So too much, when you just have to know, we're taking a pitch. We want to develop your project with you. We don't want to just get something that's just like, poof, read 20 pages. It's all in there. I've heard that too. It's all in there. Just read it. And it's like, yeah, let's work it. If I work with you, it's going to be much more a pleasurable time, and we're going to get something. You're going to get something.
I wanted to, there's so many good points in there, and I just want to stress, I very much agree, as one who was both sold and bought, that notion of doing your homework cannot be emphasized enough, whether it's about your own show so that you're confident in asking questions, or more importantly, just the good business savvy, the common courtesy, the being smart enough to know, if you're in Rohit's office, know everything about his network, right? Don't get show titles wrong. If he asks you something that you don't know, just say, I don't know. Or, I've heard of the show, I haven't seen it yet. Don't get caught just amusing him but then annoying him by trying to lie your way out of it. Better yet is just, if you're there, know in advance, whether it's from you guys, your own research, friends who have pitched, agents or whatever, be prepared, especially with a network like theirs, which isn't yet top of mind, but is doing this work, is public about some of it, about what their kind of, networks refer to them as mandates, what they're looking for, what examples they use. We talked about, the agencies prepare for their clients, the points of reference that they're using of like types of shows on other networks that they would like to have that might give you some guide, right? But equally, and I'm thinking back to last week where Christine talked about this too with IFC, they have a pretty formalized process now through the years of how they develop, what they buy. But you're exactly right. It's one thing to be the 1 in 100 who has kind of, let's call it the perfect show, if such a thing exists, like ready to go. You just need him to say yes and give you some money. Like, it's so unique. You've thought out every beat, but that's rare, right? And especially if on a business level, They're a network that likes to develop with you. They want to be convinced of your original idea, but then they want to have their input. As you all know, that's a natural human process. It's not just about business. So even if you think that you have your thing perfectly knocked, right? Be smart and allow that element of Rohit and his colleagues, even in their enthusiasm, if they're going to buy it, they want to put their mark on it somehow. You know, we've talked a lot about like how you deal with network execs. Yeah, it may be stuff that's going to screw up the show. It may also be stuff that's going to make it great. Or it may be the stuff that helps you get on the air. You know, and so none of these should be rejected out of hand. I mean, you should speak up if you say something's a dopey idea, but at least give them the chance to express the idea and why it would be either pleasing for him because he's proud of his idea or how it fits in his business.
Yeah, oftentimes it's
Go ahead.
oftentimes it's like you'll pitch an idea, but you may not know that internally we would love to do that concept, but we have something we would love to do around that concept.
Right.
So, you know, like there's something we would love to do around, you know, the news space or the live, but we have our sort of like focus on what we want and what we're looking for. So
Can I give one, I hope, useful example in exactly that area? And please stop me if have I talked about Bill Maher and how his shows have come to be? Okay, do you guys watch Bill Maher on HBO at all or see any of his clips online? But you know what the show is, a comedy, but also serious panel discussion show, live late Friday nights on HBO, right? Current show is called Real Time. Bill himself refers to it actually as Politically Incorrect 3.0. Do you remember his earlier show, Politically Incorrect? So that, what he calls 1.0 was the version that ran on Comedy Central for many years. 2.0 was the version that then ABC bought and put on the broadcast network. He refers to Real Time, just internally to his friends and his staff, as 3.0, because for him, this is now the best version of what he did. That other show was 4 nights a week. They had tons of dopey celebrities on because they were on networks and they were just promoting stuff. For him, the current version is the best because it's kind of the all-star cast. It's only on once a week. The 3 people who are on are meant to be there. They're not dopes. They're okay, et cetera, et cetera. The reason I bring it up is many years ago, I was hired to be head of programming at this new network called Comedy Central. My first week on the job, this is where I met our friend Vinny.
Yeah.
My first week on the job, I'm just making my way through meeting everybody because I was a sort of late hire, going through all the departments. By Friday, I started on Monday. By Friday, I'm ready to hear my first pitch. And an old colleague, a studio head named Nancy Geller, who was running an internal production unit of HBO, brings in these 2 guys, Scott Carter and Bill Maher, both of whom I know have worked with a little bit years earlier. And they proceed to pitch me Politically Incorrect. Now, to Rohit's point, what Nancy did as a selling producer and studio partner that was so smart was she knew I was already interested in a comedy news panel discussion show. It's hard to imagine now, but you know, because there's Larry Wilmore and everything else, nobody was doing that. There was this popular news panel discussion show for real, news called the McLaughlin Group, which is actually still on in some bizarre permutation, barely distributed now. But it was like a popular syndicated 4 people and a host once a week on the weekends talking about the week's news. In a way, I mean, it sounds crazy because everybody does that now. A bunch of people had been circling, myself included, the idea of, hey, wouldn't it be fun to do that with some comedians where it's smart and informed, but it can also be funny and it doesn't take itself so seriously. Nancy had been interested. She knew that I would be interested because she and I had talked about it. So it's almost like I'm a buyer who's already primed to buy, but that's all to her credit. She's smart enough to know that. But the key is, and again, this doesn't always happen, Bill and Scott were so precise in their pitch that it may be the only time that I've been involved in this where, much as I would love to say, oh yeah, we bought their rough idea and then we on my team made it better. No, the show that we put on a couple of months later was exactly what they had pitched in my office. And one of the reasons I was so excited to buy it was, even though I thought I maybe had some of the answers about, what about this? What about what is your role as the host? How many panelists should we have? Where should we shoot it? This, then. They had answers for every question that I asked. And Bill later shared with me, He had been thinking about the idea for 5 years. He just hadn't been in a position. His stand-up career was going fine. His acting career was sort of occasional, was going fine. He didn't yet have the juice to sell it. And then this happy set of circumstances came along. He wasn't the biggest name at the time, but this new channel that needed programming and where the head of programming happened to want a format like this. The key though was the confidence that comes. They weren't bullshitting any of it. They really had been thinking about all of this for the longest time. So it goes back to your larger point about the preparation, right? Try to anticipate every question. Don't make it up if you don't have an answer, but better is if you have an answer. You know, now you may hold back a little bit because you don't want to reveal everything, or you may want to leave room for Rohit or me as the buyer to add our version of it. But if that kind of confidence, again, not arrogance at all, true confidence born of, Bill had been thinking these things through for 5 years, and the answers came very naturally to him. So it was easy, I mean, I say that now in retrospect, it was easy to say, yeah, we'll give these guys what little money we have. And we didn't even make a pilot. We just committed to a big batch of shows, which was remarkable too, right? Yeah. But all a long way around to say, do your homework on every level. Know your show, know your concept. You know, if you can sort of, and I've suggested this to other people, game out a pitch session and maybe with friends or colleagues, get them to ask you questions. Don't just think about what you know already. It's possible you may have missed stuff, you know, or if they were thinking like, oh, the show should only be once a week, but I come in and I go, you know what, guys, really like this, but I got to make my dollars go further. This is only going to work for me as 4 or 5 times a week. If you need the opportunity to say, hey, let me think about that, that's cool, but just do so. If it's possible that you've thought of that, and then you can give me an honest answer of, well, you know, I have thought about it. Here are the pluses and minuses. It would mean A, B, C, D. We'd have to do it this way, we'd lose that, you know, and then we can have a discussion, but again, at least you've anticipated so many possibilities.
Yeah, we do this as a writer, you know, like I would pitch my friends, I would pitch Mitch, I would pitch anyone I could pitch just to get through the practice of it and answer all the questions. So I'm sure like you guys should use each other and just, we do these brainstorms even internally at the network is we have sort of development ideas, like how can you come up with TV shows? And then we would practice pitching on each other. Like, so I encourage like my staff members too. I'm like, you know, there's people on the staff who are from marketing, from whatever, different departments. I'm like, come to my office, pitch me. Like, I'll give you feedback and tell you how it's done.
Yeah, well, that was actually what I was going to bring up earlier. I feel like a lot of this program sort of pushes the approach that you should just, you know, be constantly working on your ideas and, you know, practicing your pitches for, you know, the meetings that you'll have with people like Mitch, where, you know, you go into a room not having known anyone and just, you know, throwing an idea out there and having, you know, your entire sort of reputation rely on this one sort of meeting. But on the other hand, there's a slower approach that I've sort of been more confident in attempting, which is, you know, try to get a job on one of these existing shows and then, you know, sort of learn from experience like a mentor. And then, you know, once you sort of get the gist of how these things work and feel like you have the confidence to, you know, create your own model, then, you know, you already have all of these connections and this established relationship, and they know how you think and they know how you work. And I was just sort of wondering how, like, what percentage of pitches come, like, to you internally, or successful pitches that come to you internally versus, you know, the people who are making their first impression on you?
I think I haven't had enough sort of a field study yet, but I will tell you this, like I get, because I'm new, I'm getting so many new people coming to me. If you know your project and you know your pitch, first of all, you won't be nervous and all of that. Like, it's your first impression. Just know, relate it to me. And here's why. So someone came in and pitched me a game show, and I did not know these people. I didn't know who they were, but I loved that they started the pitch with, you know, first we're like, hey, how are you? Who are you? Hello, hello. And the pitch started like this. They were like, let me ask you this. Would you rather, and I started playing the game with me. And I was like, oh, this is fun. And at the root of it, we're making TV. It's creative. These are all like creative ideas you're going to have, whether it's a scripted thing. So relate the scripted thing like, you ever wanted to go to outer space? Yeah, I'd love to go to outer space. Like, what about a story? And just get me hooked so that I'm like, I can sort of be in that world. So that would be a suggestion when you're pitching. Not everyone's going to relate to your idea, and don't see it as like don't see it as a stinker if the person doesn't respond. But find that way to get that hook and sort of. I know I'll get back to sort of what you're saying is like, what's the percentages of internal and knowing someone and not knowing someone?
Well, you were just explaining how valuable it was for you to gain experience before you really had the capacity to run your own show and pitch your own original ideas.
Yep.
And you were watching people do that for a while before you started doing it. And so, I mean, it seems like it was pretty invaluable to you. But there are these people who are just creative prodigies, and they just can wake up every morning and dump out a hit single or whatever it is of the Beatles.
I think I want to say I feel like I'm just saying this right now out loud. I think I was a creative prodigy. I didn't know how to get it done, so
I can confirm it.
I was trying to pitch everyone. I know my colleagues, my friends who I grew up with in the business. They were always like, "You're going to pitch what? Like you're again." I was 23, and Vinny took me into Comedy Central with a pitch, or 24, 25 actually, like that. I pitched the head of Lou Wallach at the time. And I still tell the story because Lou's come into me. So there's going to be two ways you can go about this. What I'm trying to say here is I went in at 25. I pitched a show. It was Fly on the Wall. It was an animated show. I came in like I did not know how to pitch anything. And Vinny's like, just relax. We're going to go in and talk to Lou. And I went in with these boards. I drew everything. I printed them out. I put them on styrofoam. I started doing like a presentation, and these two proceeded to just rip me apart and make fun of me and joke and goof on me. And that's where I started realizing it's a development process. Things like happen step by step. But at 25, I wanted to run and just pitch everyone. It's just I didn't know how to do it until I worked through the business and I figured certain things out. And I said, oh, this is how this works. Oh, now I have more credit, maybe more validity to sort of my ideas and who I am. But I would encourage you to keep pitching. It doesn't matter when you are, like even go through the process. So I'll say go through the process because it helped me. I think you should do it just for if you want to be a showrunner. You'll be great showrunners if you really understand the business and what's going on and your experience. If they're gonna throw you in as a showrunner right now, it'd be tough because you'd be like, I don't know how that editor thinks and works. Whereas I know I've been an editor, so like, oh, this is how a TV show works. So it's just experience that gets you there. But you should pitch because your idea could stick, and your idea, it's always good, especially scripted. I think scripted right now, if you're a writer, that your talent is on the paper. So. That's right there. That speaks for who you are. Whereas I was pitching stuff like, at one point I remember going to lunch with you and Vinny, and you were telling me about Survivor. And I was like, this show is going to be awesome. This show, I know where we ate. I remember the restaurant thinking, this is a great show. But also in the back of my head thinking, I had that show. Like I wrote it in my notebook full of ideas. But I wouldn't know how to pitch that. It was such a grand idea. That you're like, how would I even how would I cast 19 people? How would I, or however many people, how would I film this out? But, once you start working, you have that experience and then you're like, it's a confidence thing too. But on the scripted side, get those things out there. But even, I'm sort of bouncing back and forth. Even with TV shows that might be a little tricky, I do get pitches now where people film stuff. Put it on, if you really feel strongly and want to put it on tape, there's going to be a couple executives who want to see something and they'll be like, that doesn't look so great. They haven't been in the business enough and understand. But then there are those who I'll see something like you were asking about the YouTube stuff. You will see the nugget of something great and say to yourself, that person, if he or she had money and a production staff to support them, this thing could be really awesome. Now, I wouldn't put them in the showrunner position right off the bat if they were young enough. I would say, here, let me pair you up with a Mitch, a Rohit, or someone that's like, let me just sort of show you how this works. So be proactive, like just make your stuff.
Yeah, that's, I don't know if we've talked about it, you know, and I think Bradley, when he was here a few weeks ago, touched upon it with nonfiction production companies as clients, that for a number of years now, with people in the nonfiction realm, unscripted, you know, it used to be they could write up a concept, they could write up a treatment to describe an idea like Survivor or Big Brother. And then as those kind of formats took off in popularity, it became that they had to shoot little sizzle reels, right? Now, some of it speaks to, you know, we've talked about it, buyers are getting increasingly lazy because they can. And a lot of people just don't like to read, or they want it to be visualized for them. So now you have, you know, it, and I see it bleeding over even to lightly scripted or hybrid kind of formats. I don't know if it's making the difference with pitches coming your way, but that's not to say you have to go shoot an entire pilot. But a lot of companies now do specifically have a budget just for sizzle reels. They'll shoot enough. They may shoot 20 minutes. The goal may only be to have a 2-minute cut down that they can show Rohit, which better than a pitch verbally, better than anything writing is gonna show. You know, if you didn't already know Billy and if you weren't already doing it for YouTube, but you had this great guy who just did this for fun, you might make a version of it just as a sizzle reel, right? The other thing I wanted to add in is all in the realm of, you know your audience. In most cases, somebody, if you're invited to pitch for whatever reason, you've been on a staff of a successful show, you're just known as someone who's doing cool things on his own, maybe in the theater world, whatever. Hey, you know, Rohit's in a position, you're smart, you're creative, just come in and pitch, right? Yes, in that case, you want to have pretty fleshed out ideas, right? Yeah. There may be other circumstances though, I don't know if you do this, periodically different companies do, where you just want to sort of convene a brainstorming session with a lot of smart outside funny players.
Yes.
In that case, know what you're walking into, because that may be the opportunity to raise some of your notions that are not fully baked. And if that's cool, and somebody might want almost scraps of ideas, then go for it. You know, you may be like I might have mentioned, right now our development unit is housed in, you know, this company WeWork, these collaborative workspaces. There's now like 30 across the city, right? For us, for our business, it's a good place to be. But you look around and, you know, you think, oh, how come nobody has set a comedy in this place? Now, I know a lot, Jimmy Fallon's company did a pilot a couple of years ago. There's a lot of people chasing it. It's not a novel idea. But if it was early in that cycle, just to have a snippet of, hey, what about a show set? You haven't figured out the show yet, you know, or somebody who might say to you in particular, hey, Ro, do you remember Remote Control? Okay, in its day, that was really popular. I think we should come up with the new Remote Control. And then you guys could have a productive discussion creatively around, well, what would that mean? What was it? Why did that work then? What would be the updated translation today? You know, what would and wouldn't translate? What would account for changes in viewing habits, in devices, in social networks, whatever it might be, right? I don't know, do you use sort of just germs of ideas, but not fully fleshed out ideas at any point?
Yeah, we not only do that, germs of ideas, they're great. You know, that's usually going to come from a showrunner or a writer would come in and say, I have a germ of this idea, it's a log line, and we'll flesh that out. But also, we get a lot of reels now. I love this too. Now I have a mentee, where I call her, I have a couple, but she did something that blew me away. She wrote a movie script, she's trying to sell it. She's a hustler, I love her. It's because she's out there just pounding the pavement with this script. She's like, no one's like, and she's gotten deals, which is amazing. But here's what she wants to do. She wants to turn it into, she needs funding now. And she's really chasing this. She wants to do it on her own. She cut a reel. I thought this was genius. I should actually, if she allows me, I can send it to you to share. She took the script and adapted it with scenes from all sorts of movies. So she would say, a girl goes home for the holidays. She did it with creative text, and she shows a movie scene of just a bite from a movie that says this has like, you know, Natalie Portman going home from whatever movie, you know, she comes home, she's like, Mom, I'm home and I have some news. And what the mom didn't realize is she was about to tell the family that she is now a lesbian. Or no, she comes home with a guy. So anyways, the premise, she painted that whole thing with movie scenes and TV shows. That started as a germ of an idea, and she came and she was like, here's the concept, and we fleshed it out. So we get pitches now at the network. We call them, maybe it's a hot reel, where you just take examples from other things and say, here's the gist of what I'm thinking of. And it's not even fleshed out. It's like 2 people, and they use stock footage, and you know, they just pieced something together on an edit. And I'm telling you, that's gotten deals. Where you've gotten, what that did is it took it to the room, the development room, and it got us all talking and saying, what could this show be? So that was the germ of an idea. And then we developed it into something and went back to that company and said, you'll produce this now.
And while you were fleshing it out, was that company still involved, or were you bringing them back an idea separate from what they had envisioned?
We came back with something we said, look, I love that you knew we were thinking of this space. Here's something a little more targeted, what we were thinking. Let's hand it off to you to come up with ideas. And sort of, I like to give people a little bit of ammunition and like an extra so that you're like, here's where we're slanting. Could you develop it in this direction? And they always, unless they're really like, you know, dead set on like, nope, it has to be this, this, and this. You're like, well, it's not working. Here's what we're looking for. So yeah, we involved the production company, and then they started riffing on it, came back with an updated version.
And if anyone here were to bring you an idea that you liked, but there were some element where you said, hey, I think I should partner you with XYZ, right? An effects company, an animation company, a music, you know, musician. Or do you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's something I'm learning now, which again, this is useful for you guys, is when you're younger and maybe you don't have that like experience, and you know, you've been in the business minimally right now. So you're learning, you're doing everything. You may come in with a great idea and I would be like, you know what? I just met with this great production company a few weeks ago. You're very like-minded and sensibilities and comedy, you're there. Take a meeting with them and then you guys figure that out. If I'm really interested, I would call the production company and say, hey, I'm interested in this idea. You guys should work on this and come back to us. If I have a little money, I can give you a little money, but at the root of it, it's like, that's how things start for sure. Like, so that's why I say encourage, like, you know, 25-year-old going in with these boards, it was helpful because once they stopped making fun of me and stuff, then they said, listen, you should talk to so-and-so, and let's like, Vinny helped encourage that. So yeah, there's encourage that.
So do you do that internally also? Like you'll say like, you know, your idea has promise, but it's not like a full idea. And I think I understand your way of thinking. I want you to write on this show that we have already, and then come back to me once you know what you're doing in a year or two, you know, after having gained this like incubator experience. And that happens?
Yes. Like you'll come in with a good concept. I can see your sensibilities there, your comedy's there. There's chops there. The show might not be right for us, but you can see that there is sort of like your sensibilities are good for, you know, this show that we're doing. You can write jokes for these comedians who come on. It's perfect. Yeah, that actually, even in my short time at the network, I've done that where I've recommended writers and comedians to shows to either be on the show or write for the show or do something. It's something if there's room for them. Yes.
That, you know, Dave, you get to a really important point, which is, yeah, you may be there thinking that the be-all and end-all is your idea, right? But remember, the Rohit of any meeting also has his own business needs.
Yeah.
So while on the one hand, being passionate, being informed, being excited, and really letting him know everything your idea can be is great, but equally, you don't have to say yes in the room, but to be open to, he may have other business needs, like he's got this other show that is about to go back in production for season 3. They have one open staff position they've had trouble filling. He may think, oh, we just started an internal unit that is making our own sizzle reels. You know, we have this other show about to launch. It's kind of sort of in a similar space. You know, Dave's brain would be, the way he thinks would be good for, I know he didn't come in asking for a job on these other things, but to be at least open to not just, hey, here's a job, but someone saying, I like the way you think, and my more immediate need is this. It's not what you planned. I know you're looking to sell your show, but at the very least be open to that.
Well, so what would you think about someone who comes in pitching a show and then gets rejected and then makes that type of request of you? Is that something that, you know, shows like signs of they're giving up on their ideas, or they're open to whatever they can take?
It's exactly that. You encourage that. You hope, you know, it's going to be hard to get your TV shows sold. There's processes and everything. So if you come in and I say, listen, this is a pass, I wouldn't tell it to you right then. I would think it through. We go through development. We, you know, pop it around, and we really try to like figure out like, is there a nugget in there that we should send back to you and say, look, there's one nugget in this. Go explore that and come back to us. You know, with something a little more developed for what we're looking for.
Yeah.
But then, yes, I would absolutely say in the meantime, if it's like if, you know, he or she or you coming in, I would say your sensibility is great. Yeah, let's go. In the meantime,
Yeah.
you should be writing on something there.
You know, we may have talked about it, but if you've ever been in a sales job, if anyone in your family is in a sales job, if your friends, you know, the one thing that people in sales, you know, always say this, it doesn't matter if you are selling appliances or cars or films or TV, you're selling yourself. That's effective salesmen are selling themselves and can sell anything as a result. So even though we like to think our thing is creative and it shows, or movies or whatever, you're still selling yourself. So it's a great question, and I understand your worry. I'm like, bro, I would never worry like, oh, he must not have liked this idea, he just bailed on it quickly. I'd be more, no, this guy just wants to work and he's looking for a way in, and he's seeing I'm offering him a way in. It's more to my immediate need, but that's not a bad thing if you say yes, because among other things, it reflects, you know, this is hard, and most people are not going to sell a show the first time out or in the first pitch meeting or whatever. So an element of realism helps too.
Well, yeah, that's why I feel like in the last couple of months I've been, you know, talking to you and Norman about just like, you know, what impression do I give off, you know, that I'm not seeing of myself, and like how can I, you know, push that in a way that, you know, will just attract people to my positive qualities or whatever it is, and my strengths. And so I feel like you want to know what, like, how you're perceived. You want to have this like certain degree of self-awareness, you know, just in the sense that you want to be able to promote the best parts of yourself, is what I'm saying. You want to know what people are going to latch onto, and you want to, you know, hammer that point in as much as possible. And so, I don't know, I think that has almost become more important than the writing at this stage of the program, just because, you know, we have this hard deadline of when we need to be employed by, and you know, it's kind of a rat race, and it's just interesting to hear these perspectives, because we're sitting here thinking, you know, there's this one option of, you know, being an amazing writer and then sending that out, cold calling or whatever it is, and you know, all of the stuff we've learned in this class has basically taught us about how many avenues there are to achieve.
There are umpteen avenues. Can I just?
Yeah, please.
Cause
yeah.
What? Practice. When I say practice, I mean like in the mirror and practice. Practice. Just get out there, meet as many. That's why I truly encourage. Like, I know it might seem a little silly. You're growing up in the business together. Grab each other. Go be like, hey, can I just practice this pitch on you? And the more you practice any of that, so you want to know what you're giving off and all of that. I think as long as you know your project, you know who you are, and pitching it, and you just be authentic about it. Just practice. Just get out there. I could see I used to just I used to get nervous at my pitches. And then I start to realize I just don't know my project well enough. I'm going in, I just was in a rush to pitch something.
Yeah.
And once I realized, once I knew my project inside and out, and I didn't have to sort of think and just do, I could just sit and have a meeting and then talk to someone. Like, what Mitch says, not coming in with a paper, but just be able to talk to someone and relay your ideas and know that it might not stick. It's okay. It's all right to you actually, in fact, want to get rejected. You do. You want to go into a pitch and have it bomb. Because then once you bomb, you're like, all right, now I
got that out of the way.
Got that out of the way. And if you bomb a bunch of times, look, then it's just like, no shame.
Yeah.
And then is your project right? So you need to just like get out there. And we do these exercises internally. We do internal brainstorms. We come up with ideas and we pitch the group, like our little group before we pitch like a big group. And every week it's like, find a podcast you think could make a good television show. Write the treatment around that. Last week was find a cool article or column you think could be translated into a TV show. There's this game everyone plays with me there. I say I can make a TV show out of anything. So they're like, what about this bottle? And I'd be like, this is the adventure of this bottle. It's half full right now. Or is it like, I can just go through these exercises. It's only going to help you. But for the meetings, just get in there and know that there are umpteen amount of ways. If you don't know how you're going to do in the room, maybe what you can start to do is partner up with a good director, a good editor, your age, someone who's doing the same thing you guys are doing, and know that partnering up is like the greatest thing, and say, all right, I'm going to be the writer on this and play it legit and make sure that director plays it legit and get a video. A lot of pitches people, like I have this one company, can't say that, I would prefer not to say their name. He's just not comfortable pitching. And I could see both of them are, but they're geniuses in visual storytelling. So they come into me and they're like, this video. And we watch the video together and that video then speaks for them in other meetings. Like that's what they do. And they're good on set and they're good behind the scenes, but in the room, it's almost hilarious now. So I'll even be like, let's go get a beer and talk about it. And they're like, definitely, it's so much easier. So find the best way you can pitch. If you know that you can pitch on the computer and you can make something, make that little thing.
Yeah. I'm sure that Norman or Bernie or others have talked about, write-in partnerships that arise where one's actually a stronger writer, but the other, while a lesser writer, is the pitcher. And that's okay. I mean, partnerships, in many different businesses are formed around lesser things than that, right? And Ro, I agree with all that, and I would really just broaden it to say, understanding the context, which is, so this is a 2-year program. We're about, 6 weeks away from graduation. So understandably, the agita is increasing over like,
you've got to
what
work
next, right? And that's just it. We talked about it, that you've got to work. Not just around pitching, but even more, I would say, yes, rehearse, practice, but also just do something, even if it's not, writing is great. If you have the wherewithal to write it and that, that is your singular strength among others, then, by all means do it. But equally, if it is, work walkies, do animation on your own because you can. Teach yourself a new skill, try scoring, get with colleagues who are doing other stuff, volunteer on somebody else's thing. Just the doing, I think, will be better and will help you get out of your heads. And I'm not minimizing in any way the frustration, the worry, or the need to pay the rent or the groceries or whatever. But that element of, Dave, you've touched on it, if you're going to go down a path where maybe you're going to go to work for a network, I'm making this up as a creative exec. Sam, if you're going to work in films because that's your first preference, my hope, ultimately it's for all of you to decide, has this program been worth it? For me, easy for me to say, but I'm not going to judge your guys' success by 10 years from now, are you all television showrunners? My hope is that you'll be successful in creative pursuits. Benson, you chose to take the class. You're not even in this program, right? So you're going to use it differently. Hopefully it's going to inform your own creative writing or businesses that you go into. that I hope for you guys that the question of success is, did you take all this stuff in ways that will be useful to you, whatever the particular disciplines are, many of which you'll choose, many of which in a way will be chosen for you just because of the randomness of like how Rohit was describing how he wound up on the Howard Stern show, where there was no clear path to that.
No.
It just happened for the right reasons.
But you know, I want to say I did know I wanted to work on Stern.
True.
And when Vinny, because I said if I'm coming from Letterman, my next sort of idol, it was Howard.
Yeah.
Just his interviewing, and I knew you guys got it, and I did go after Vinny's going, hey, is there anything? Is there anything? Nowadays, like go to the production companies if you know like like you like Adult Swim shows, or you like there's a production company that's doing a scripted show, like target that company and try to take a meeting, take it, you know, we call them informals or sort of just like
generals.
You come in just to sort of, hey, hi, this is what I do, and get your writing in front of them. Sort of teetering off focus. I think be as proactive as you possibly can. Go to TV seminars. I know like there's these conventions like New York City Film and Television Week. They do that. There's parties and there's things like that. Like you can go to those things and there's like these daytime events. Look, I couldn't get into these events. They cost money. Call them up and say, hey, I'm a student. I just graduated. You know what you'll end up doing? They'll say, come volunteer and help us with like coordinating the lines. And then you can come to the event and learn and go ask questions in seminars and pass your resumes on and do what you need to do, but be clever too. Find neat angles. Like if you're a writer, I know we talked about Twitter and things like that, but it's hard to self-promote. But if you're gonna do a blog or you're gonna do something neat, have a cool angle. You know, find something that's like, you just want me or anyone else out there reading it to go, that's cool. I've never thought of that angle. Like that's neat. That's something different, and it showcases what you can do.
And like Sam, it's great that you volunteer at the Tribeca Film Festival, right? Great example.
Awesome.
You never know what kind of exposure. And that's perfect when it's something really spot on like that, or as you said, the New York production focused stuff. But also I would encourage you, think a little bit more broadly. You know, think also about some of the tech conferences that are in town that relate to video. Think about, you know, you may not want to go into advertising in the least, but with everything we've talked about on the business side, to have some greater understanding of the world of advertising, of brands, of agencies. You'll want to know it just because it's still how a lot of your product will be paid for in one way or another. And B, in that way of you never know, now we're in a cycle, we've talked about it, where brands are getting back into, almost like it was the 1950s, new ways of directly producing or more directly paying for stuff. You never know who you'll meet at an advertising conference that's in New York City.
And also, Google and Facebook have offices here.
Right.
So they're all over the place.
Exactly.
So
right.
like if you don't know when you're gonna be meeting with them, and they party.
Exactly.
So it's like
Exactly.
So
I mean, and places like, I don't know if they still are, but one of Rohit's clients is LinkedIn, which you don't know makes some amount of video and is increasing it, right? And you guys did a lot of their early video. They have an office here, right? I think it's mostly ad sales, but do you deal with any creatives or editorial people who are here?
I like that Mountain View.
Right.
But there is some. Dan was, so there's a guy, it's New York City.
But yeah, Rebecca, it's great that you even know that, and just that kind of paying attention, you know? And it's one thing when you read, oh, look, YouTube opened up in New York. Great, well, obvious, go, you know, figure out a way to get in there. But to, again, think more broadly about right now, we just think Facebook, right? Well, but they're making huge efforts in video, you know, and now live video. Now, even if live video isn't your thing, pay attention, you know, when you hear that Snapchat is here with the sheer amount of video on Snapchat, again, may not be your thing, you know, you may not be paying attention to Vimeo. You know, they're here, right? Figure out a way, you're exactly right, and think more broadly about, how do I get in? Who do I know? Do I just show up at their door? Well, sometimes it works. You know?
Yeah, target focus. Find the things you want to work in. See a credit.
Right.
See someone's.
And I think a great one actually is, even if you hadn't met Rohit today, if you're reading the example of True TV, I think is a particularly good one, if for whatever reason you are looking for or stumble on that early stage of, oh, that's cool, I just like that show that True TV just put on is not like everything else. What does that mean? Or if you're able to dig a little bit, talk to agent friends, follow in the trades. Oh, interesting. Okay, True TV, which hasn't been associated with comedy, is clearly going for comedy. Figure out a way to get in early when they're just starting to think about this stuff.
And I can attest to that because I did research before the first interview I did with True TV. And it's very different from when it was like 2 years ago when it was all tow trucking.
Right,
shows,
that's what-
the
right,
Wizard Taking
right,
Towing and
right.
spin-offs and all this kind of stuff and really bad pawn shows. And then all of a sudden, they were struggling with this new angle, and then they acquired Billy on the Streets from Fuse.
Yep.
And that's what really made it what it is in that comedy realm. So they were able to keep like Impractical Jokesters, the World's Dumbest Moments, and that kind of stuff, and rebuild it around those hit shows.
Mhm.
You're nailing it. That's exactly the timeline. That's exactly what's happening. It's just reading up, like following all the trades. Trades are
Right.
great.
Absolutely. And
Trades are
even
great.
it almost sounds like being a sports fan, but like it sounds nuts. But if you see that a certain executive who has a track record in one of these network transformations, if you see that Rohit has gone somewhere else years from now, or Christine, or someone you don't yet know, but you go, oh yeah, I read about them. They were responsible for, giving Travel Channel a whole different focus or whatever it might be. And then you see they're going somewhere else. There's a decent chance they're being hired for that skill. Whether it's just transforming a network or maybe Christine or Rohit get known as, oh yeah, they're the ones who have a really smart specialty take on comedy. There's a reason Discovery Channel hired them. Discovery must be about to do something in that space, right? Either get back to them or figure out how to get to them. And I think there is reward very often to be, if not the first one in, an early one in.
Yeah.
Right?
And if you find our names and you see us, just know that I don't want to be like, here's the do's and don'ts, but if you find a Mitch and you find that you get me, check in with me, but don't just rely on me to get you a job. What you should do your homework too and be like, Rohit, do you know anyone at X, Y, and Z? And that's how your network starts to build.
Right.
So that's just doing your due diligence.
Yeah.
And finding, because I do have my mentee, she's not like, I need a job, because I know you all need jobs. It's the most important thing right now. But what she will say to me is, hey, I love what they're doing at Abominable, the production company, or I love what's going on with Comedy Bang Bang.
Right.
Do you know someone at Comedy Bang Bang? And I would look at their company and be like, actually, yeah, I do. Let me put you together.
Right. Right.
So
that, by the way, that's a great point. If you weren't, that specificity and that clarity about what you're looking for is so helpful. I happened to get an email last week from a colleague from my HuffPost days, and he was specifically asking if I knew anyone at Snapchat. And not only was I not annoyed at him, I was annoyed at myself because I don't know anyone at Snapchat right now. And I felt I was letting him down, and his note was just perfect. And he let me know what he was up to, why he was asking, and I was bummed that I couldn't help him out in that moment.
Yeah.
But in no way was I annoyed because he was crystal clear about what he was looking for. I thought, oh, good for him. He's on it. There's a reason for him to be going after Snapchat right now.
It just seems like it's a respect for what you can bring to the community. It's
Yes.
Just the individual.
Yeah.
And that just shows with people that, just in terms of making it up and stuff like that, just if you respect the fact that it is communal, yeah, everyone's self-interest, whatever.
Right.
But just the fact that everyone's kind of networking for each other, and that
Mhm.
if everyone's bringing it at the same level that you're putting energy into bringing
exactly.
it,
Yeah.
then that shows, and that's how you want
Exactly. And we've talked about sort of knowing the opportunity, but also respecting the time of the person of whom you're making an ask. Part of what was great with this guy was it wasn't one of those, hey, can you help me get a job? Where now it's all on me. Even though his note was really brief, between knowing him and just seeing what was in the note, I thought, he's doing all the work. He's already figured out why he's going for a job at Snapchat. He's just being smart about asking me if I can help in this small way, which is, do I know anybody there? And he knows I'd be happy to introduce him if I do, right? But again, the subtext to it is he's doing all the work. He's not asking me to do all the work for him.
Mitch, you said this earlier too, there's so many outlets right now, brands. We are looking at brands constantly and what they're doing. That was one of the other homework assignments we had, was brands. So find a brand, find the advertising company. Just know there's so many different ways
Yeah.
to do original content and to do your writers and you want to work on stuff. They are making content everywhere right now. You just be creative on like, just find something you like and just be like, who made this?
Right.
Contact.
You know what I'm thinking? We were talking briefly earlier, Sam will come to you in a second, about comedians in cars getting coffee. So you guys have noticed that Acura, right, underwrites. I know nothing about Acura as a company, right? It occurs to me now, if I were in your position, I'd be figuring out a way to Acura, the brand, the agency or whatever, because a company that was smart enough to get in on that and stay with them and has enough of a sense of humor that the show creatively, in a fun way, can kind of shit on them or shit on, not on them, but on the fact of product placement and have fun with it. That says to me, they're doing a bunch of things right, and it would be crazy not to ask, hey, what else are you guys gonna do? You know, should I bring you another car-related idea? Should I bring you an idea totally off base that wouldn't seem to be about showcasing your cars? But I see what I'm finding also with a lot of brands, and stop me, I may have told you this, like when we were launching this live streaming network for HuffPost, we were really lucky that our two charter sponsors were Verizon and Cadillac. And though I was thrilled that we could take their money, you know, as I met with the people from the brands and their agencies, it took me a while to figure out like why privately I was thrilled they were so interested in us. But I was trying to figure out like, we're gonna be sort of talk radio on the internet with cameras. So like, why is a car company a tech company? And in each case, it turned out, both companies were at a point where they wanted to sell specifically the idea of innovation. Something I didn't know about Cadillac. For decades in the American car market, Cadillac was known for having the best engineers, but consumers never knew that. But like they were respected in the trade for that, and typically a lot of innovations that we would not pay attention to came from Cadillac engineers. So they were trying to recapture a part of their heritage. Verizon, obviously being a tech company on every level, wanted to speak to innovation. I raise it because those attributes these days in the brands connecting to content realm are often way more important than what the product itself does. So like we were launching this live streaming platform now 4 or 5 years ago that at the time was innovative. It involved a degree of viewer interaction and our own web apps and mobile apps and this, that, and the thing that others were just not doing. In many ways, we like predated Periscope and Meerkat and Facebook Live and YouTube Connect and all that stuff. So they just wanted to be associated with innovation, right? Well, similarly, you might in your travels, if your show is about relationships, you might wind up with a brand that is not like Match.com, where it's literally about relationships, but on the subtext level, something about that product is about relationships. Yeah. And they are looking to speak to it, and you don't know until you get in that spot to ask or make the connection yourself.
Do you know anything about like advertising agencies and like I know they have writers, obviously.
Yeah.
So like, are you ever like, are you ever like canvassing like for talent in those areas, or?
I don't directly, but a lot of people through the years. You know, if you remember the filmmaker John Hughes, he started as an ad copywriter. There were these guys, Jay Tarsis and Tom Patchett, who came out of advertising. Yeah. Certain people do come out of it and make the transition where, you know, it's like Twitter. I mean, you may not like that it's all about commerce, but you certainly learn and improve on the skills of writing and working on a deadline and working on multiple levels and all that stuff.
Well,
so
you're writing for something, let's say it's comedy, you're trying to get something funny in 30 seconds or 15 seconds.
Right. Can
you do it creatively fast, convey a joke, get a message? I think we look at commercials. I know I might even cast someone talent-wise from who was in a commercial, but also like writer-wise. I may be wrong on this. You know that show on HBO right now? It's called Animals, the cartoon.
Yeah.
Is that are those? Or I think maybe they started or they are.
That's part of the Duplass Brothers option pack that they have with HBO.
Yeah.
And it started, I think, with Togetherness, but that got canceled, so that's their other show. But they have like, I think, a 2-year or 4-year option deal. There was something described in the cancellation of this for Togetherness, and that's one of the shows that came out of that pack is Animals.
Sundance.
Yeah, something at like Sundance, like, but I think the creators are too. Advertising might be, right?
Right.
But that's where they started, and not even started, that's what they were doing right now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
again,
and,
I wouldn't rule that out. As
there
I've
are
said,
full
you know,
movies.
I mean, job's a job, right?
Holiday nights that are just all advertising.
Right, exactly,
Brand
exactly.
content.
Well, and then they get a great, you know, scene out of it, right? Which is all about
Right.
the saying grace and working in every sponsor in the process, right? You know, we're in an era, 30 Rock does, it did it, you know, where a lot of people are just wise to the having fun with the now conventions of product placements,
Right.
you know?
Kind of electric.
Yeah. Any other questions? I want to be mindful of your time. And
No.
wow, look how fast it went. We didn't take our break, so we'll take it now at the end of class. And I can give you a lift back to the subway because I'm going there too.
Oh, fantastic.
All right.
Yeah, does anyone have like some question, like, I know you need jobs right now.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
The
Are you
obvious
offering?
one.
that's your targets. Is anyone coming close right now? Like, are you like in interviews? Are you,
You guys have had some interviews. Has it been for anything full-time or more just project-oriented stuff?
It's also email correspondences with people who are going to hook me up with other people.
Right.
Right now I'm talking in the theater world. That's so different.
Okay.
It's a process.
Yeah, look, and you guys know, I mean, you know, you're not entering into the typical world of like getting a 9-to-5 job where you're going to be in an office, you know, for years and years. And I mean, likely it's going to be on a show, you know, or at a production company where it's more project oriented. But, you know, as Hyman Roth says in Godfather 2, this is the business we've chosen.
I was a temp too, you know, like,
Right.
you just do what you need to do and work on your stuff all the time and just get it out there and you figure it out, but you know, just be smart.
Yeah.
Smart and savvy about it and ask questions. Always ask questions.
I stocked shelves in a hardware store and then drove hardware out to construction sites, and still one of my favorite jobs.
I've driven vans, I've spoken on docks. That sounds weird, but I used to give
Right.
announcements on like the New York waterways. But then you know what I would do at the end of that speech? I would drop a note and be like, I am a comedy writer. If anyone here works in town.
By the way, great. I don't remember if Norman's ever worked with him, but you guys know the actor Danny Aiello? So he came, I don't know if you know his story. He started acting professionally fairly late in life. I don't think he was maybe into his 40s, right?
Oh, wow.
And one of his main jobs was he was the public address announcer at the Port Authority. And if you ask him today, he can still do the entire list of stops, right? In his announcer voice, right? So, you know, your early jobs will stay with you the same way, even if they're not spot on what you're looking for.
I'm incredibly envious of everyone in this room and what you're doing, because this is awesome. Like, to be in an MFA program and to be able to do this, just like incredible. It's incredible.
You guys have heard me say it. I mean, I know you can't pay the bills on it, but I agree with Ro. I think the combination of that there weren't programs like this, so you're now getting exposure to other people and kinds of work, the singular work you'll do, the collaborative work, understanding of all the crafts. You know, Rohit had to make that graduate school himself. I did of a fashion too. That combined with, as you've heard me say, I think you guys are just graduating. I know it's tough economically, but I think in terms of the arc of what your careers will be, the opportunities you're going to have and make are even greater. And we've been lucky, you know, but all the stuff that's going on with technology, with it being more available in your hands, with new distribution platforms, there are just way more ways to work it. You know, we had fewer channels. Channels in every sense, TV channels and just channels of work.
Which I think I personally loved, but now you guys have so many options. Creatively, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Instagram, you could be creative on Instagram.
Yeah. We looked at a British show that's an Instagram series.
Yeah.
People related, you know, releasing 15-second episodes.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's just,
It'd sort of be funny to see all of the people who have failed at doing what we do and just like have a little like AA meeting of doc announcers. And,
well, how about this? Are the other cohorts,
50-year-old
are people
writers.
getting the cohorts that have come before you? Are people getting jobs? I mean, or do they have jobs already?
No.
Like one or two of them. I think.
Really?
But it's
No,
very
so
difficult.
how-
There's a lot of assistance
Okay.
out there.
I mean, yeah, they're not like
So,
going into writers' rooms immediately or anything like that. They have jobs.
But
Like,
people,
you know,
from,
I'll just
people from
show.
cohort 1 and 2 though, they're like, a lot of times talking about they're in LA and like actually.
I find that encouraging. That's what I would hope. I wouldn't take it for granted.
One alumni got into the CBS, the
Oh.
Fox Writers industry.
Great,
Oh, yeah.
great. And by the way, again, if it's a year or 2 or 3 out and you're an assistant at a good place, again, I score that in the win column,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
Rebecca, you talked about it. I mean, the idea that, you know, there's nothing to look down on about an assistant position. That is a great, great way to get work.
That's the natural next step, honestly.
Well, I also think the process will get much faster for future graduates of the program, just because it's very new. And
Yes.
I mean, classes like this didn't really exist before us.
Yeah.
And I mean, they had it in a certain, iteration. But
Yeah, and look, my hope is the more of you that are out there, the more people and the more guests we have, the more people come to know the name TV Writer Studio, right? I mean, and hopefully it means something over time. Again, like we were talking about taking advantage of a J.J. Abrams connection, hopefully over time, somebody leading with, I'm in or I've graduated from, goes to the top of
And
the
I've been
metaphorical
looking-
pile.
Do you have this is so, I'm at a CBS page, still 20 years later, we do page, like, that's my little first email blast of like, hey, looking for a showrunner, a writer, like,
Yeah.
and I go to
Yeah.
Mitch, I go to mentors too, and Vinny. But do you guys have that? Or do you have a little alumni group?
there's a
Isn't there
TV
a-
Writer Studio Facebook that is blasted a lot by like some of the older, like this guy Gabe Tolliver.
The only person that
He
posts.
posts new things like
It's very
But
prolific.
also they're-
we're not like in a position.
We don't
But-
really
but
have a huge
before
alumni
the
network.
program started, Bree posted on the TV Writer Studio page like, "Hey, I'm a new student. Like, is anyone else in my cohort?" And I responded, and we met up before the
Nice.
program started.
And now
and,
we're
like,
best friends.
Wait, if,
What?
And now we have our own series.
if there's not an email chain amongst, I know that Facebook, like, that could get
Yeah.
a little bit lost too. If there's not an email chain or something right now, someone start it, because it's
Yeah,
only
that's a good
gonna
point.
grow, and that list is gonna be so valuable to you. Also, get your people who graduated, they know what it feels like, and start emailing them on that chain. Don't be shy on that. I promise you, our chain is now like 60 to 70 big, and you use it responsibly. There's some yo-yos who will still like write in and do stuff like, but it's entertaining.
Yeah.
But you want that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Few people are going to be more sympathetic to how you're feeling right now than earlier cohorts who have felt the same agita as graduation approaches, right? So Rohit's right. Don't be shy about that. By the way, I saw something there's like an alumni event. Are you guys going to that? I mean,
Yeah.
good. Because again,
Networking thing.
I mean, it's like Thursday night or Wednesday
Well,
night or
because they
something.
just
or-
canceled one on
No,
Saturday.
they're
Oh,
combining
really?
it with the one on Thursday.
Oh, God.
I see.
Yeah,
got
there
it.
were 2 ones. There was only one on this
God,
Saturday
again,
and one on
you
Thursday.
never know. But,
Yeah.
you meet one person, you yields one job and all been worth it,
Yeah.
right?
It's funny. I got invited to this networking event by these alumni who I did an internship with last year for their YouTube series, and they're like trying to start like a YouTube Red type of a company in LA. And I think you spoke to them, Kate and Brian.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So I email them your articles every week.
Yes, they told me.
And so,
Yeah.
And so they were just like, "Oh yeah, we're going to this networking event. It's sponsored by this startup called, First Call or whatever. It's like an app where you get free drinks if you go to a different bar every hour or something like that." And I was like, "Oh no, I don't have business cards and I didn't have all this stuff." So I went and like got all that together and showed up, and there was obviously no one there from the entertainment industry at all. But I ended up making these connections, this like flower delivery service, and now I get like free flowers every time I want to send
Worth
someone
it.
flowers.
Yeah,
It's like,
Saving the money on
you never
flowers,
know, like
right?
you never know what you're gonna like come across in these things.
Yeah, it's so
Becca
true.
goes to bars downtown and just it's just like, hey,
Hey,
you look like a
Hey,
producer.
be careful about how you phrase that about Rebecca, right? Just
No,
goes to
she-
bars
she was
downtown and
saying how
right?
she goes and talks to actors and producers that she sees, and right? You were pitching
Flirts.
that idea.
The word is flirt.
Hey, but no, you know what? If like, crazy overstating it,
I'm
but
not
like,
criticizing.
no. If getting free flowers and using those flowers as part of your thank you word, I have a colleague still where I remember early on, this one other colleague and I helped her out with something, and I employed her, so I knew how little money she was making, and she wrote us these nice handwritten thank you notes and gave us Starbucks gift cards, right? And I'm thinking, you can't afford one, let alone two of these. Why are you? I mean, I appreciate it, but why? But I so like the gesture that, and I'm not saying you got to find your thing that works for you. There was something about someone handwriting a note and giving us something that I knew she shouldn't have been spending her money on. Like that still stays with me.
Yeah.
She's one of the first people I'll call just because I think, oh yeah, you're the one who got us a gift card. So whatever your thing is, play those through.
Sell yourself.
Yeah. Like, but again, even to use
Enjoy the game.
That's
Love
right.
the game. The game
But
is
Dave, to use Brian and
fantastic.
Kate as an
I think I'm
example,
paying for college.
I would have answered anyway just because they used your name. They mentioned they were grads. It happens that I had spoken as a guest years ago for Norman's course in their cohort. But there's a great example where they're creating a whole new thing, a whole new business around a specific genre. I would never say, oh, it didn't work out for them because they're not show running writers.
Oh,
You
no,
know?
I wasn't saying that.
No, I'm just saying we're using them as,
no,
exactly, I'm just using them as an example of
and
the outcomes are so good and so varied of where you guys may find yourself in the years to come, that even though this is built for success as show running writers or writing showrunners, there are so many other outcomes that will still be successful ones,
Oh, absolutely.
in addition to that, or even instead of that. So,
But we have to say that because this is the program.
yeah, true.
Charming,
True.
delightful.
All right, Ro, thank you.
Thank you
And I can share your email address with everybody.
guys. Anyone like right now in town?